All right, so here I am again, here on a Saturday. It is 4/11, 2026, April the 11th, 2026. And this video is going to be about a few different things, or should I say this live stream. So the first thing on the menu is Ascension. What is it really? See if my tongue can catch up with my mind. Sheesh. Hi, Daphne. So, again, we're going to touch in on what Ascension really is, what that means, in all practicality. Not something happening to you, but something that you're orchestrating, and you don't have to do a whole bunch of things in order for that to happen. And I want to lay out a very clear, hopefully, understanding of what that is. So you may begin your process if you haven't already. All right, so that's the first thing on the menu. Also, I'm going to be answering some questions. And then I'm going to focus on, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and play a video that I did, I don't know how long ago, a couple years ago or something like that. I'm not sure. That relates to scalar mapping. Okay, I think that's pretty much it. So in the process, kind of wait for people to show up here as usual, because I don't really announce these things. Hopefully I can, in the beginning I did announce this stuff, and then when something would happen, well, what happened was is that the computer broke down, and that just created a lot of issues, and people got bored or whatever and just disappeared, and it took forever to get anybody back. So I decided not to start all over again and announce that I would be going live. But I have, I did, should I say, post concerning that I would be doing a live, but I didn't say that I would be doing it today. In fact, I didn't even know if I was going to do it today or not, but here I be. So I'm just going to wait around here until anybody shows up outside of Daphne. Daphne's always here. And yeah, so Daphne's communicating in the chat. So if you can read the chat, or if the chat's available to you to be able to read, she'll just give you instructions what to do. And I would ask you to go ahead and do that. Good afternoon. Yeah, good afternoon to you as well. Good to have you here. Can't quite see. Stephen. Is that okay if I just call you Stephen? All right. Um, all right, so what I'm going to go ahead and do while I'm waiting, because once I get into this, I'd prefer if there's a few more people here, and so that I can address this properly, at least give it my best shot. And plus, I need a little bit of time to kind of get my things together here in order to present that. One of the things I seem to be having issue with is the ability to speak. So that there's that factor. Chris Star One, great. Glad to see you here. Awesome. Thank you. All right, I'm going to go ahead and play a performance that I did. It was in context to explaining the reason why I had written or put the Jaleesic layer tones to music it's a summary of what that actually the story that it's telling. I know that instead of me going over the whole entire thing, which would take a long time, the conclusion that I had, which you can find that video, by the way, you can find it in Patreon. Okay, and at the very end, I perform the song that I had written that summarizes all the Jaleasic layered tones, which tells a story. Okay, it's a process of ascension, right? So where we expand out from, going back in. So this is what the song is about. It's taking that and defining it and bringing it into a story coherently. Yeah, so I'm just going to go ahead and play that. It'll be about like 3 minutes or so. And I'll come back and I'll look to get started with this. Okay, so...
Vibrational intention, we manifest form. We manifest form. From the primal sound fields to the primal light fields, we now be liquid, luminescent light. Now the divine sea of liquid light, Unoreor the pillar of living water, which flows the river of life, sound and light expressed through the divine mind, the divine mind. Now experiencing paradise, now manifest the eternal paradise within the pure living water, the tower of source, of sound and light eternal. Here in which soul takes on manifest form, this the Adamic eternal flame, the son of Jordan, Adam, son of source, the atom that holds the eternal doorway of the first creation point, the eternal source, the tower of souls, the eternal source, the tower of souls, the tower of souls.
Alrighty. Let's see here. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and get started. So again, first on the list here is with what's in the title. So what is Ascension really? Well, Ascension is really a process of steps. And it's about moving forward, and then you're moving back, moving a little forward, moving back. It's like a dance, you know, because it's really about holding frequency in your space, so that fluctuates. And, well, especially in this condition here, within this world, that's a given, right? So ascension is always a process of you could say choreographed dance steps, because it's through intention that you're doing what you're doing, and it's a process of moving forward. So if you're moving forward, then excuse me there, I don't know what happened to the camera. It just kind of did a weird thing there. Excuse me. So ascension is always a process of choreographed dance steps, you could say. All right. You will never continually move forward here, not in these outer worlds, okay, because of that fluctuation. And especially the body condition here, the way it is, it's always in flux. Now, there's certain things that you can do to perhaps expedite the process, but again, it's always a process either way. So our spiritual evolution in regard to ascension is a series of dance steps. Moving forward a little bit, think of yourself going up, you know, a ladder, or going up the steps to a room above or whatever. You go up 3 steps and you go back 2 steps. And you go up 3 more steps, go back 2 steps, or 1 step, you know, drop back 2 again. It's just that process of ongoing moving forward, you know. You're climbing the steps, right? So it's a process, and it depends on the conditions and situations that's going on. So it's not really a matter of looking at progress. It's not about a progressive thing. If I do this, A equals B equals C results in D. No, it's just a matter of having your intention focused in maintaining your course. You know, you're going up to the top of the stairs. That's your goal, and that's where you're going. Doesn't matter how long it takes for you to get there. You're going to get there eventually, right? So that's really what it's all about. So, a good way to look at or test how you are moving, and this is where it gets into practicality, okay? And this is really what I wanted to emphasize within this communication. And again, as usual, I'm always speaking to myself. And for those who can hear the sound of my voice, they may receive benefit. So I'm thinking out loud here, if you will. And so I'm not talking at anybody. I'm speaking to myself, and we're hopefully being able to engage with what's being said. So the test that I think is good for seeing whether or not what your progress is, if you want to look at it from that perspective, which you really do want to look at it from this perspective. Okay, let me make this clear. If you have initiated, now this has to do with this, it has to do with the drive that you have within you, okay? And you're here boots on the ground. And there is a reason why you're here. And the reason why you're here is because of what you intended. And that is reconnecting or reactivating to your contract, your covenant that you made with your soul collective. Okay? And I hear people poo-poo on that, and they say, oh, you want to denounce your soul contracts and everything. Wait a second. What's important is to understand what you have intended. It's about recovery of that, okay? And if you have a strong drive towards that, you don't know quite what it is, but you want to initiate that. You want to reactivate that contract here, right? And that drive within you is a point of reference to the authenticity of wanting to do that. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't put it to test, okay? But not so much to where you squelch it. You need to allow for it to come forward, and you need to allow for consultation so that you can assess what it is. And if it aligns within you and you go, I know this is what I'm supposed to be doing. You may not have a clear-cut plan, but you have the drive to do it. And you know that it's your authentic self that is desiring this, okay? It's not a program running. It's not, something that's influenced by external sources. But at the same time, you're still going to be testing it to see if it aligns truly with that. So that takes a bit of time for that to occur, to process. And for some less than others, it doesn't really matter. It's about that engagement. So you're going to initiate a consultation seeking reactivation of your contract. And honestly, at this point, you're going to ask yourself, am I ready for what I am going to learn? Because my situation has been where I've been receptive to certain things. But from the very beginning, I was communicated to in regard to what was required of me in order to fulfill that or get momentum going with the reason why I'm here. And I really didn't want to do that. I really didn't want to do what I was being told. This is what you agreed to. And it was difficult because it's a long story, and I'm not going to get into it because it's personal as well. But the point is that I really didn't want to do it. I wanted to do whatever I needed to do, but I didn't want to do it that way. Okay? I'm being vague on purpose, okay? But just to make a point, you have to ask yourself honestly, what is it that I'm going to learn? Am I going to be receptive of that? So you need to prepare yourself. You don't know. It might be something that's like, oh man, I don't want to do that, And in a lot of cases, people have come to know that, what it is, at least enough to know that this is the path that they need to be taking. And they, like myself, walked away from it, temporarily from time to time, because it's like, oh man, I'm all by myself doing this, and nobody's really, it seems to fall on deaf ears, but you can't pay attention to any of that is what I'm saying. That's important. You can't pay attention to it. Don't look for the results. Just know what you're to do and put your head down, so to speak, and just go, and allow yourself to open up. It's not easy here. It's not. It's just not. Some things are popular, especially now, if you're doing something. But some of the things that people are communicating now, especially young folks, young people, 25 years ago, no way. There's no way that they would have an audience. They would have a fringe audience, but you would have to watch what you said, too. You can get yourself in trouble. You got to keep certain things within you secret, and then you act and look. You continue to walk in it. And a lot of the older folks or whatever that came up prior to this suffered a lot of persecution through what they were doing, and you have a combative, ongoing aspect, especially if what you're doing is truly meaningful, and what that would be, that the opposing forces, the demonic realm, everything else, is going to not allow you to do that. They're going to put all kinds of roadblocks in front of you. You're going to get tripped up. You're going to be tempted. You're going to be redirected. And it's going to be done through people. It's going to be done through circumstances and situations. And it's important to understand that you need to be honest with yourself by saying, What is it that I'm going to be learning? Am I ready for that? Okay? So, otherwise, what you'll end up finding yourself is you'll find yourself going through the motions. Now, I want to clarify what this means, going through the motions, because this is something that you don't really hear too many people. I actually haven't heard anybody talk about. All right? But I know it to be true because I do understand this sound and light construct, the mechanics of it well enough to know that this is a consciousness construct. Okay, we may look at it from the perspective of saying dimensional, multidimensional, but what does that actually mean? You know, I'm not talking about measurements and stuff like that. It's a consciousness construct. So within, as an example, within dimensions, there we have layers of sound and light spectrum, which is consciousness layers. And within this consciousness layers, or consciousness bands, as I prefer to call them, we have layers of ourselves. And you can think of those layers of selves as being copies of our authentic self, mimics of our authentic self. It's part of the construct. It's the design. It's the harmonic structural design of it. So if I was to share with you as an example to this, as far as you being your authentic self or your true aware self, right? Authentic aware self, right? If I were to share, this is an example, all right? If I, as an example, were to share with you some information that I would be holding, let's say, within 3.5 dimensional consciousness awareness, all right? And you are acting and interacting within that state of awareness that is the present moment. That is to say, the present moment. It can be fairly certain that it is your true aware self and not your placeholder aspect of self that's interacting. Because your placeholder, or copies as it would be, mimics what the true self is doing in respect to the state of frequency that it's in. And it just mirrors it. Okay? So this is the question to be asked here. It's like, is it your placeholder self going through the motions that is doing what you are doing? Or is it truly your authentic, aware self that is engaging? So, so the other way to look at this is like, or from that position, is it your authentic self or is it your placeholder self? So if you're not able to connect, here's the way to distinguish this. If you're not able to connect or interact with the information / instruction shared, and you feel like you're directed there to it, or you're looking to recover it, that's the beginning point for your authentic self to be present. Okay? And what is occurring is like when that information that crosses your path, because you've orchestrated that, okay? You've orchestrated that information to cross your path as a reminder, as a nudge for you, however you wish to put it. I think you get my point, that if you're not engaging with it and you're kind of just there, that is not your true authentic self. That is your placeholder self. And that's which is a copy of your true self. And, it can be referred to, again, like I said, I use the word mimic, of your true self. What it's doing, again, these copies of self within the design of the consciousness bands are your multiplistic aspect of self, but there's only one aspect of self that's leading all of that, and everything aligns it to that. And when we're not in that space of authenticity, we are on a placeholder spot. Okay? I'm going to try to clarify this a bit more. Hopefully, I didn't confuse this, all right? So apologies if so, and if anybody has any questions about this, don't quite understand what I'm saying, please let me know so that I can try to clarify it. All right? So as I mentioned before, within each dimension, there are layers of conscious sound and light spectrum. These being harmonic bands of awareness activated through, this is the key, these are harmonic bands of conscious awareness activated through the action of the spark of thought. Now let's define what the spark of thought is, okay? So if you are mirroring the actions of someone or something outside of yourself, you do not hold that spark. That's a mimic. That's a copy. All right? Within these dimensional harmonic layers, there is equal layers or copies of self. These are aspects of self functioning as frequency placeholders. Okay? Hopefully that brings more clarity to what I was saying. So, as an act through the true aware self, so does our placeholders mirror our true, authentic, aware self frequency. So, again, how do you know that you're engaging? Or how could you be certain? You can feel the drive, all right? The drive is a factor indicating that this is your true authentic self. And it comes from your core. That drive comes from your inner core. That's your authentic self, because it's being created. You are continuing, consciousness is continuing in the moment. And there's times where you can go unconscious. And that's where the placeholder now becomes present. You follow what I'm saying? Okay, hopefully you do. All right. So what is Ascension really? That's it. It's step by step. It's being in the present moment authentically, and when you realize or come to a realization that the reason why you're here was intentional and there was a plan, and depending on what that plan is, how broad its spectrum is, right? Is when you have the desire to reactivate that contract that you initiated through your soul collective. Okay? There was a time, and I don't want to digress too much, but there was a time, there was more than one time, where I challenged everything I, under conditions that forced me to see things. I've been sick a lot in this lifetime. And within those conditions, it forces you to focus. Everything else disappears, and you become very much aware of self, or begin to. And the things that I had experienced and the things that I had come to know, not believe, but know, later on, because of other things that I'm not able to speak about, I challenged those things. I challenged the idea of soul contract, the whole thing. I challenged everything about that. I canceled out my contracts. I disengaged from it. And I said, I'm making all the decisions from now on. But here's what I didn't realize and what nobody else seemed to realize. You are making those decisions to begin with. So you're here for a reason that you intended. And when you reactivate that contract, your agreement, your covenant, the covenant that you agreed to, and you are the way shower for that fulfillment of that covenant. You are the way shower of the fulfillment of that covenant. Only you can do that. When you have desire to re-engage that, to reactivate that, you can fairly guarantee that is your authentic self. The process of ascension is step by step. You move up 3 steps, you move back 2. You move up 1, you move back 1. You move up 2, you move back 1. You move up 3, and then you move up another one, then you drop back another 2. It's in flux. It's in fluctuation all the time. There is no such thing, as far as I know, and if there is, I'm not aware of it. I just heard the stories, but I don't know how necessarily how that works here unless there's a whole lot of other beings supporting that, and which is 12-strand DNA activation, where you move immediately out of this place. But then again, why would you come here? Why would you come here, of all places, to ascend, do that? To show it as an example? For what? Everything's covered up here. It's buried. Makes no sense to me. Because the idea of expansion into these outer worlds is a process. The reason why you refer to any beings that's gone through it is you refer to them as, at least this is the way I look at it, practical way of thinking, at least that's the way I see it. Ascension, they're ascending masters. What does that mean? They've mastered ascension. It's a long, tedious process. And like I said, steps up, steps back, steps up, steps back. What are you doing? You're maintaining your placeholder frequency. So when you move forward with your authentic self, it expands that much more. But then something comes along, boop, you drop back. Your frequency drops. It's in flux. You do know where you live, right? You do know the world that you're in. And these outer worlds are very intense, as you probably, I'm sure, realize. So my point is that this is a process of moving forward. And the first thing that comes to mind for myself to communicate, which I did, was the activation or reactivation of your soul or covenant contract, which you initiated and you are solely responsible for because you chose to be here, boots on the ground, to complete that intention. So, what is ascension? Really, it's what I just said. There's no magic buttons that you're pushing. The only magic button that there is you. No technique's going to do anything for you. You're the one that's initiating it. You're making it happen. Always. Every time, everything that you do, you're making it happen. And if it doesn't happen right away, that's because come on. 99.999%, it's not going to happen quickly. It's just these outer worlds do not cater to that. And we chose this. We chose it. We knew what we were doing. We just come here and we forget, and we have to remember, then realize that this is what we decided to do. And in a lot of cases, it's like, I don't want to do that. That's way too hard, man. Nobody's going to listen to what I'm saying. And you're like an outcast, an exile. Definitely not popular. It's just now some of the things that were very unpopular and very criticized and scrutinized and persecuted. Now people are accepting, you know. And then a lot of people want to get on the bandwagon and be part of that thing. And they don't realize all that shit that everybody went through trying to do that and hold that space for themselves. And it's been tough. But I can tell you this, whatever your thing is, meaning what your covenant that you made is, it's going to take a bit of adjustment. So you honestly have to ask yourself, am I ready to learn what I'm going to be learning? You need to prepare yourself. If you have the drive and desire to reactivate your covenant, it's important to know what you're getting yourself into. And I would say don't refrain from it. I would say whatever it takes, do it. Don't hold back. It's not going to be easy. In a lot of cases, it's going to be really difficult. You're going to run into a lot of things. And then you're going to realize, wow, there's actually spiritual warfare going on. And now you're part of it. Ready or not, here you come. So there is a process to this. And sometimes it's years or decades before people do anything truly because they have to prepare themselves. I spent 40 years preparing myself. But at the same time, I was in the midst of it, you know, on the job training. I got stories that are pretty wild, you know. You can write movies from some of this stuff. Or, you know, produce a movie, should I say. Yeah. So that's it, folks. That's it. Does everybody understand what I actually said in regard to the copies of ourselves, placeholders, and being authentic self? And it's an ongoing, in-the-moment process. So this is what Ascension is. Okay? People have all these other definitions. Cheilontic science has its definition of it. And it's pretty thorough, but it never really deals with any practical things like this. Most of it is just information that's passed on from somebody else to somebody else. And, you know, we all get it from somewhere. But internal gleaning, this is what I'm sharing with you. Internal gleaning. Was it inspired by something? Sure, you have things cross your path, will cross your path because your inner broadcast allows for it to cross your path. It's not your mind. It's what's already been stirring and recording in here within your core. And it'll cross your path, and it'll be a reminder to you. It's like, hello, hey Randy, remember this? Those things that you know? And it's like, oh, yeah. Yeah. But I'm, you know, obviously I'm orchestrating that. We're all orchestrating that, right? So every time that I'm reminded, my grip becomes stronger. It may just be a little thumbnail's grip, but it's stronger. Yeah, well, there's a whole lot to unpack here. I'm going to, give me a second here. I need to try to answer some questions from Akasha Gate. She asked me some questions and I said I would answer them. And I forgot to, I laid out the questions and put that in a Word file. So I need to go, I need to go find that. Let's see here. All right, so if you could give me a couple minutes here, so I need to go take a look. Where did I put it? Oh, I know where it's at. I remember where I put it. Okay. Okie doke. All right. I found it. Or should I say I remembered where I put it? Which is, well, I should know where I put it. It was deliberate. But, you know. You know. So, Akasha Gate is the name that she goes by. And so I'm going to go through this according to what she laid out here. You had asked if we knew anyone else talking about this. This has to do with the last live stream, okay, in regard to what is the sun really, okay? And she said Darius, I guess that's Darius J. Wright. I'm familiar with him. Don't know him very well, but I have heard him speak and about this construct model and how what it is from his perspective of what he was taught within the halls of Amente through his soul collective. Okay, and so she says that Darius does this, what I was doing, in his webinars to a certain degree. He by no means appears to have the technical understanding or isn't describing it on a technical level like you. Well, I think what she's referring to, and I think she's referring to the video that I did, which I'm going to play after this, by the way, because I think it's relevant. Because there's a whole lot packed into there, but it answers, it at least answers some questions, and it brings up others. So before I do that, I'll preface really what that's about and the reason why I put it together to begin with. But I think that's what she's referring to. It has to do with scalar mapping. That's really what it's about, which, again, that's what's within the title of this live stream at the very end. So anyhow, let me go back to what I was doing here, reading her questions and trying to answer them. He also isn't able to perceive the oblong spheroid. Okay, so my position on that's changed a bit. Oblique spheroid, actually, it's not oblong. Didn't mean to correct you there, but it's an oblique spheroid, which isn't really. It's not a globe. It's not flat like a pancake either. Or it sort of is, but it's kind of has a hump in the middle. We're talking about the shape of the Earth. Okay, this is my understanding of it. However, I'm subject to change that. It's more of a plane, and I know that it doesn't go anywhere. It's not spinning anywhere, and the sun and the moon is all local. So anyhow, a lot of these graphics, when it comes to stuff like that, and some of the stuff that I've done in, as an example, this other video that I did, which I'm going to play here at the end, dealing with scalar mapping. I could only find certain graphics because either I would have to create them myself, which would take forever to do, and making that video anyhow to begin with, just preparing it and trying to explain what was going on in regard to scalar mapping and how the space-time fabric was being manipulated, yada, 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 was enough effort to begin with. That was a lot. So I was looking for pictures of stuff that fit into what I was trying to describe, okay? And some of it is just pictures, right? It's not an exact representation, and some of it can never be an exact representation because we're talking about things from a different perspective outside of this perception of this three-dimensional construct. And most of what we're perceiving here is really not three-dimensional. I'll just say that. It's less than three-dimensional. The consciousness here is beneath that. So, all right. So he's not able to perceive it from that oblique spheroid shape, and only appears to see the individual square. Okay, I think I can't really answer that right away. It'll be answered in the video. Okay, it's talking about the grid. Okay, that's what's in reference here. If Akasha, if that's correct, I think this is what you're saying. That's a reference to the grid. So this is what Darius sees. Also, he sees the grid. Um, what's interesting, when I first came on YouTube like 16 years ago, it was within about 4 years or so into being on YouTube, I had communication with certain individuals, and some of those individuals were uh, going out of body, and they were able to see the grid, and they were able to see, far as the, their perception of, well, one particular individual had seen this, and they didn't really know what they were looking at, and there was a whole lot of things that was being communicated, and I was saying, and I wasn't talking to certain people at the time. So this goes back quite a way. So I've been here for 16 years. So on YouTube, and at least for this channel, this particular channel. So this has been talked about for quite a while. But what I'm referring to here in regard to the grid has to do with the scalar mapping aspect of it, which is primarily the whole thing to begin with. So she's saying, I in no way mean any disrespect when commenting on this, regardless of the technicality. It's encouraging people to question our reality. Well, questions are questions. I certainly don't take any offense to anything. You haven't said anything that's offensive whatsoever, so no worries. I was curious if you could describe the different God zones. See, now we're getting into the idea of these time zones, okay? Because that's the coin phrase. Well, it's not my coin phrase, but it's a phrase that I use uh, in regard to the time zones because of the manipulation of the space-time fabric. And like I said, when I play the video here at the end, I'll explain what it's reason why I put it together to begin with. But when you go through it, this will hopefully explain a lot more because I go into detail about this. So I'm not going to do that here. Anyhow, so she was curious if you could describe the different God zones a little more and how the other particle spin rates affect the humans in that zone. Um, Yeah, that's really better. That's better answered in the video. Since I'm going to play the video, I think I just would ask for you to go ahead and just kind of. I mean, there's a whole lot packed into that video. It's not easy to listen to. It's pretty involved. Okay, so it takes a bit of time to digest it and try to process what's being said because it's not a common thought. These are things that I don't hear anybody talking about. Okay. And it's not, that doesn't make me special. It just means that I don't hear anybody talking about it. And so it takes a while to get just used to hearing something new to begin with, because we always like to associate things, what we hear as being new, whether it's music or whatever it is, we always associate it through the spectacles of something that we already are familiar with. So anyhow, she follows with another question. She says, for instance, or she's defining her question a little bit more. For instance, I live in Nevada, but I'm currently in Nepal. She travels around a bit and going into Indiana tomorrow. So her job, which she does, requires for her to travel. If different factions control the zones, how is it different other than one perceiving a different time of day? Well, factions are not controlling the time zones. The time zones are being created from my understanding is that it's being created from um, the pole star. And again, that's explained within the video very clearly. But that's where that's coming from. Okay, everything is being altered from the transmission from the pole star. Okay, so I did, I think I did touch on this a little bit at some point. At least maybe I thought I did earlier. I mean, like maybe, I think, did I do it? Yeah, I did. Now I'm trying to figure out where I did that at. I did it in the last live stream. Okay, so if you want to go back and check out the last live stream, you'll probably see more of that. But again, I'm going to be playing the video here at the end that deals with scalar mapping, because that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about scalar mapping. All right, so in a geometric light code transmission, is different from place to place. Yeah, it is, because it's, oh gosh. Again, I'm going to have to refer to the video because it goes into more detail about this. And it's just better. All right, so she goes into other questions here. I'm not going to answer them or try to answer them because most of what I see here can be answered within the video. But there's a couple here I can answer, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. Welcome to the live stream, folks. Where things happen as they happen. Also, in my current timeline, the U.S. is, okay, yeah. Is there other timelines where there's not what's going on here? Yeah, there's different aspects where it's not taking place, and there's different aspects where it's already taken place, and there's different aspects where there's something completely else taking place. Yeah. My frequency dictates my reality, right? Yeah, your personal reality. However, your personal reality is influenced by the world that you're in, which is a collective consciousness. And the momentum of that consciousness will affect your world that you're internally creating. Hence the reason why I had mentioned the idea of when you're in the process of ascension, it's stepping forward and stepping back. There's always something that is creating this flux, okay? And that would be one of those things. So you have to hold your space, and it's something that you have to renew your mind to, and renew your affections to, because it's your affections or your drive within you that allows for your authentic self to be present. Okay? In that moment, in the moment. So in that case, yes, my frequency dictates my reality, or it dictates where you're at in regard to your authentic, aware self frequency. Because again, to go back to the idea of these different aspects of self within a sound and light spectrum conscious awareness. This is what dimensions are. It's a consciousness construct, and you have what I had referred to as being placeholders. And those placeholders are they act as, which is you, okay? But the true you is what sets the pace, which establishes where all these aspects of self are being placeholders that are mirroring your true authentic self frequency. So my frequency dictates my reality. Yeah, but that's within the process of ascension. And we're always in the process, at least when you're aware of it, you are in the process of ascension. If that makes sense. It should, based on what I had said previous to this, in regard to what is ascension really. So hopefully I didn't confuse that, and I'm already starting to get a little bit tired, so I didn't start off this live stream altogether. So that's factoring into this, me being very slow with what I'm doing. That's okay. So that's why I'm trying to physically travel to places where I can anchor the highest frequency for myself. Well, yeah, you can do. That's important, but it's not essential. And it depends on what you are meant to do. Because I know this from personal experience in regard to being involved with ministry when I was in Christianity. You're going to go into places and you're going to bring that light into that place that is in opposition to the light. You're going to go into darkness. I'm not saying that you're going to be doing this. I'm just saying it's not cut and dry, okay? Um, if you're going to be perhaps doing things that are going to be completely inconvenient and it's a matter of preparation before you end up in that space. So you have to carve out for yourself meditation, whatever meditation that is, because meditation just really means contemplation, really. So there's different degrees of meditation, but it gets to you can get to a place where everything else uh, fades from your reality. You can hold that for a period of time, and I think the best thing that you can do is to practice however you can get to that place. And it's not a matter of achieving, okay, now I arrived type of thing. It's just really renewing your mind and walking in what you understand, your knowing of truth, of where your path is and where you're at. Again, your true authentic self being present. That's the most important thing. Knowing who you are. Not the personality, not the ego, not the body, but knowing who you truly are. Right? So your frequency dictates your reality. Yes. But there's conditions to that. And going someplace physically can be effective for that and can help you, being where you're isolated, from all the traffic, or most of it anyhow, that's around us. So, yeah, that can be valuable, but don't wait for that to take place before, take advantage of what's going on in the moment. Question, am I working as a placeholder, or am I working through my authentic self? That's really the true question, I would say, is to be asked of self, because everything else can be adjusted according to that. Hopefully I didn't complicate that. She says, I'm also headed to Darius's, she's going to go to Darius's summit on 4/20 of this month. So April the 20th of this month, she's going to his summit. I will definitely share your videos and Patreon with people there. Well, I appreciate that. Um, we all have we all have to stand in the gravity of our own shoes, but it's really so important. At least it's been part of my crusade, if you will, from the very beginning of creating this channel on YouTube, to have people truly working with one another and being available to one another. That's how we're really going to get most of what needs to be done here done. Otherwise, we're just kind of creating little pockets here and there. I think it would be better if we could, for a lack of terms, I'll use the word network, to come together to be available to one another, doing what we can and letting our yes be yes and letting our no be no. What we can do, we can. What we can't, we can't. But being available and at least being encouraging to one another, My soul's contract, and I would say this for everybody, my soul's contract, my covenant agreement, which I initiated prior to coming in here, is not a vocation. It's not a brand. And unfortunately, I'm just going to call it, unfortunately, in a lot of cases that I run into, we have so many degrees of separation from one another because of the way this world is. And we kind of conform ourselves to the way that the world is. You have to have a brand. You have to have this identity. You have to blah, 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 blah. For those who are spiritually minded, you don't have to have any of that. Meaning that shouldn't be your motivation, or it shouldn't be a sense of conformity. It's okay to have those things. Don't get me wrong. okay? Because sometimes those things can be beneficial, but it's not the first thing on the list, okay? When it comes to working one another. And I think those things have kept us from working one another. It's like one person has to be better than somebody else or be more credible than somebody else or whatever so that they don't get washed out, you know? I've been on here for 16 years and I haven't even yet broke 10,000 subscribers. So I've been really flying under the radar quite a bit. And most of what I've had been saying hasn't been very receptive. It's only been within a few people, you know? But, you know, can that be discouraging? Of course, you know? And it's not like I haven't reached out to people and certain individuals so that we could work together. We don't have to agree on everything. We just need to agree on, you know, the common points, you know. If we're doing this for the benefit of all life, I can, if anybody has that creed where they're doing it for the benefit of all life, truly within their core, this is for not me just fulfilling my intention here, but it's the bigger picture. And if we can agree on that one simple creed, we can work with one another. We don't need to go into detail. We don't have to agree about everything we're doing, but that fundamental, foundational perception of the overall reason for doing what we're doing is something that we can lean on. And therefore, we can work with one another. Somebody's got to lead the charge. And I was hoping those who were in position and had been doing this for a long time and had a pretty strong following, that they would be the ones that could be doing it because they had that prominence, for lack of terms. I'm looking for words here that would fit with this, but they've been doing it long enough where people knew who they were and they had a track record and they had credibility and all these things. So people would be more likely to hear what they had to say in regard to what I'm talking about here, in regard to working with one another. So anyhow, I digress, but obviously there was a point to that, and it was in context. So I will definitely share your videos with Patreon and the people there. I had previously tried to share... okay, so she did see the video. I thought she did, which I'm going to be sharing here at the end. She said, "Your incredible checkerboard mutation on the Telegram group." That's not what the video is called, by the way, but anyhow, that's okay. I know exactly what she was talking about. So I asked her if she actually seen this video, and obviously she did. So I'm sorry that I didn't really see what you were saying here before. I just get a lot of things going on. Akasha Gate, I get a lot of things going on, and sometimes I just forget, you know. So anyhow, so she's been sharing it on the Telegram group, and of course, you know, not everybody's going to be receptive of things that you share. They just, my experience has been the majority of what is shared hasn't been receptive, especially if it's something that's not commonly within the vernacular or within the mindset of the collective here. Okay. So she just referred to that, people being kind of fanatical about their beliefs. And instead of looking at it from a perspective and looking at it from what it is, that's hard for people to do. It's hard for people not to put on their spectacles of belief systems while they're looking at something. It's just what it is. It's like I said, use the idea of music or whatever it is. There's always this association with something that you're already familiar with. And sometimes that comes with a very strong bias. And it is what it is. So also, any thoughts on the cosmic signal that was just received from Cygnus X3? I have no idea. I don't really pay too much attention to any of this stuff. I don't really look around for things. If anything at all, I kind of entertain myself with looking at reels, and usually like animal stuff, things that are funny, and occasionally I'll run across things that are spiritual in nature, and if I feel to share those things with people, I'll do that. But I don't really spend a whole lot of time listening to stuff on YouTube or anything else. It's usually music. I'll listen to stuff just to relax. People talking about guitars or something, or something like that. That's relaxing for me. It's pleasant for me to, you know. So I don't really go down. I just do my own thing when I'm doing my own thing, and it comes forward out of me. And when I get my path crossed with things that are occurring with my internal broadcast, and then I'll come up with stuff that I think would be beneficial for me, and that I could share that may be beneficial to somebody else. So some of it requires a lot of work, some of it comes quickly, but that's it. So that's all her questions. I know I didn't answer half of them. Sorry about that, but I think, like I said, the video itself that I'm going to play here pretty soon is going to answer a lot of those questions. Again, there's a whole lot of information there, and it takes a bit to get used to really what's there. Even after I did it, I have to go back and listen to it. Go, what was I saying? I mean, it's like I understand it to a certain point, but I did explain it a lot better within the video, even though I was kind of doing my best to communicate something that was really hard to communicate. I wasn't able to really use images that fit with what I was saying. I was just doing what I could with that, because some of this is beyond what we can create here anyhow. Or at least, I don't know if it's still going to be two-dimensional, okay? So I just described it the best way that I could based on how I was able to understand it, okay? All right, so I'm going to go ahead and play this video, and I'm going to go ahead and preface that by saying the reason why I did it. This was the fourth video in the series that I was doing in preparation for the flame body activation. Okay, so at the very end of this video, I go into explaining or speaking about, should I say, communicating what I was given concerning this. That last part of it was through the last part of the video where I'm explaining how it affects the DNA, quote unquote. All right. Because within this transmission, there's a whole lot of other things going on within the transmission. Like I said within the video, this is like hundreds of millions of years advanced to any technology that we're aware of. At least that's the way I seen fit to communicate that, because it's hard to wrap your mind around all this. But if you think of like all the different coding that you see within a transmission of a TV program or something, and all these different analogies are covered within the video. But anyhow, at the end of the video, it talks about how this affects the DNA and how it's created reversal and blah, blah, blah. All these things related, okay, in regards to the DNA and how it's affected the DNA. So again, the context for the video is that it was a part of a series that I did, which was 4 videos, this being the 4th video, before actually doing the flame body activation. A lot of what you see in Keylontic science is like, okay, you do this and you do that and do this and do that. It's like, and most people don't even know why they're doing it. They're just kind of going through the motions. Again. How much do we just go through the motions? We don't really understand. We really don't have our attention really focused according to what it really is. Therefore, our intention is not clear, and we're just kind of dog paddling in the water, trying to stay afloat. We're just going through the motions, man. So authentically, we're not present with it. And when we try to be authentically present with something that we really don't quite understand, we can't engage. So my whole thing has been learn this, and it's taken a long time. And most people get bored and they walk away from it if they don't know really what's going on, because they're not really in it for the long haul. It's like what I was doing with the our multidimensional anatomy, the same type of thing. It takes a while, man. And I was bringing to it what I had to give. So I was creating things. I was putting certain things to music so it'd be easier to memorize and things like that. Before you move to this stage, this has to be here. This has to be. So once you get the big picture of it, you go, oh, I get it. And your intention is very clear. So that's what I have been doing, but it hasn't been very receptive because it requires discipline and ongoing interaction with it and learning. And people don't want to do that. They want quick stuff, you know? And that's not, I'm not being insulting. I'm not saying that I'm better or anything like that. I don't like doing anything more than I have to either, honestly. But the reason why I do things the way that I do them is because I know what is most important for the individual is for them to be clear about what they're doing. I want to be clear about what I'm doing. I just don't want to guess through it. I don't want to be going through the motions. I don't want to be a placeholder. I want my authentic true self to be present as much as possible. Okay? And so I'm sharing it from that perspective. I feel that this is something everybody, if they believe it or know it or not, this is truly what they want. And so I'm not going to diminish that by, giving them a cheap substitution, even if I have to, get the bitter end of it. Because being on this channel, this is true. Being on this channel for 16 years, this has been a hardship. Okay? Because it's been like pulling teeth to try to get anything going, to get true engagement going. And it's only been the uncommon man and uncommon woman that has stepped up. But here's the thing. Even though I am greatly appreciative to all of those who have assisted and have been there, it's important to understand when people are been doing something like for myself as long as I've been doing it, there's circumstances and situations that people don't know about and that it's not meant for the public to hear, but they still exist nonetheless. So if something happens to me and I lose the ability to be online, or I get sick, and then I have this huge gap of time where I'm not able to communicate to people, I get dismissed. And so does everybody else that does that. And I have a problem with that, because this goes back to the idea of accountability and being there for one another. Now, I understand the online portal experience that we're having is very limited, and it can only be what it is. It's not a substitution for boots on the ground, personal, immediate, connecting, accountable, having to be accountable communities. The definition for the online community is very broad. But one thing it doesn't require accountability. In person, within a congregation, requires accountability. And this is the reason why it doesn't really work that well. And only a handful of people step up. Because those handful of people that step up are the same people that behave the same way in their personal, physical community. They're the uncommon men and uncommon women. And we need more of that. And what that really is your authentic self coming forward. Not your ego self. Not your temporal self. Not your identity self. But your authentic self. So, hopefully that was encouraging, although it sounded like an admonishment, which it was too. All right, folks, I'm going to go ahead and play this video. So, and then I'll come back afterwards here. And it's going to be a while. I think this is like 40 minutes long or so. So it's going to take a bit of time. I'm not quite sure of the time, but it's going to be it's long, not real long, but long enough. So if you're willing to hang out for it, that's fine. If you want to come back and watch it later, because through this live stream, well, initially in the beginning, I do not put any monetization on this, but I do end up putting a monetization on these videos, all the videos. But I was also thinking of placing this in Patreon so people can watch it uninterrupted. Okay. Anyhow, all right. I think I've said enough. So I'm going to go ahead and play this video. And afterwards I'll come back. And I'll hear what you have to say. If you have anything to say, if anything, questions that you may have asked. Because I'm going to step away and go outside for a little while. Get some fresher air, I guess you could say. So anyhow, all right. I'm going to go ahead and play this. I'll be back after it's over with, okay? Thank you, everybody, that's been here up to this point. And thank you for your comments and participation. It's greatly appreciated. Hopefully this has been beneficial to you in some way. Okay, so this is the fourth and last video within this series. This series is called Preparation for the Amaria Instant Buffer. That's technique number 8, part 2. Yeah, this is pretty involved, this particular video, okay? However, I'm not going to be able to do that which it requires, because really this subject matter is so involved and so deep that it would require a year, a team of people qualified, and financial support to be able to fund it. You need to be able to make a movie out of this because it's really involved. We're talking about a technology here. This technology is 100 million years advanced from anything that's being utilized here, at least within the mainstream. You know, I don't know so much about that which pertains to the, black operations and all the things that are hidden, but certainly here on the surface, where the majority of the people are working with Tinker Toy technology, this is 100 million years advanced. So it's so advanced, there's no comprehension. It sounds like woo-woo to most people, and understandably so. However, my attempt here to summarize this hopefully will bring a better understanding for you. So the checkerboard mutation, what is this? Okay, it's being utilized through a technology. The name given for that technology outside of the coined checkerboard mutation is the Nerubian diodic crystal grid. Nerubian diodic crystal grid, the NDCG, or the Palladian Nerubian Anunnaki Nerubian diodic crystal grid. Okay, what is that? It's a sentient AI computer system, okay, that is interfaced through sentient consciousness, okay. It's a vibratory sound programmed sequence, that is the checkerboard mutation result, that has been running through Earth's temporal function. Temporal meaning the construct of time, what time is. And if you've been listening to my channel and listening to some of the videos, you have a decent understanding, well, should, depending on which video you listen to, have a decent understanding of what that is, how time is a construct and how it works. We're talking about particle spin rate in regard to the temporal function, right? So sector subdivision of the flash line sequence within Earth's space-time vector locations, speeding up and slowing down the particle spin rate, creating the illusion of so-called time zones, or also you could refer to this as being God zones, not source zones, but God zones, the ones who have boots on the ground and are leasing these lands and utilizing the energy and the life here, you and I, as cattle or chattel. All right, so I want to back this up a little bit and go back to the Palladian, Nerubian, Anunnaki, Nerubian dyadic crystal grid. All right, so don't lump all Palladians in with this. That's ridiculous. Same goes for Anunnaki descent. Okay? So when we look at the Pleiades, from which we get the word Palladian, I don't even think that's what they call themselves, but, it's a name. Who cares? Like here, you got, how many races do you have? We're all called human, but how many races do you have? Not everybody acts the same. Of course, Earth is a different scenario altogether, and that's what we're going to be talking about, but you get the idea. So, in other words, don't lump all of these together like, oh, they're the ones that caused all this. Give me a break. First of all, this is emanating from the pole star. Okay? Right? Ursa Minor. All right. So one of the things that is taking place here is the, manipulation of the particle spin. This is sector subdivision. We're going to get into this because that's the reason why I showed you the checkerboard there. And we're going to come back to those images because they're going to be very relevant. It's, let me just say this. It's quite difficult to be able to break this down. Most of this, well, I would say half of this information I've discerned and figured out on my own and reworded things in order for it to be understood in contrast. So there's like 100 million years difference in regards to the technology that's being used. So there's no point of reference here for anybody, really, most people. Again, to emphasize, half of this is coming from me. It has to be something that I understand and relate to before I get into it. I'm not a reader. This is a preface to this, okay? I'm not a reader. I never been. When I was in high school, I stopped going to day school and went to night school. And one of the classes that I had taken was speed reading. So I kind of learned how to do that a bit because I don't like reading. I'm not a researcher. I work on a completely different level. Only reason why I'm bringing this up is simply this. Realize that this is what I'm trying to communicate to you based on the way I understand how things are. Take it or leave it. Doesn't really matter. All right, so let me back up and just recap what I just said, okay, prior to me going on a rant there. This is a vibratory sound program sequence that has been running through Earth's temporal function. That is to say, we're talking about particle spin rate. This is part of what it's doing. Okay, the result of what this is doing is more than this, but this is in part to what it's doing. So technology that's being used is creating this sector subdivision of the flash line sequence with an Earth space-time vector location, speeding up and slowing down in particle spin rate, creating the illusion of so-called time zones or God zones. All right. And we're gonna cover that a little bit more as we continue. So this planet, again, it's an oblique spheroid. Okay, not going to get into this flat plane thing with a dome. The firmament is a 7-layer frequency fence. This planet is an oblique spheroid. Okay, however, because we're going to look at this checkerboard mutation thing now. Okay, let's start to break this down. However, its quadrants, that is this planet, has been cordoned off, okay, in square grid pattern celestially because of the Metatronic Wizardek Phantom Matrix pentagram / cube operating technology. All right. This has to do with the way that the space-time fabric is under that operating system, or again, checkerboard mutation. Okay. Are assembled across the grid that is presently quadrant vectored. Again, we're talking about how it's this vector subdivision and the flash line sequence with an Earth space-time vector locations. Okay. Another way to look at it is like this. Okay. Think of these vectors as being like pixels, right? So each pixel within the Chimera reality is a square. Okay, go back to the checkerboard mutation, take a look at that. here's an image where you're taking the hexagram pattern, which we see with the Partakai, okay, and it is reconfigured into a square pattern. I'm trying to summarize this because it's so involved, man. Hopefully you're following with what I'm saying. This is helping up to this point. You go, okay, everything is kind of cordoned off, right, within this grid. And this grid is for the purpose of the benefit of those beings here with boots on the ground that are the gods, quote unquote, that are leasing these lands and utilizing the resources being us, really, for their benefit. And each section is delineated to a very particular ruler within this world. Okay? Are you following me so far? Okay. So the 5-point pentagram scalar vibrational science takes the points of the base 8 operating system. We're talking about the checkerboard mutation of each of the 4 corners of a 0 point at the center. Okay, we got a picture here. You see that red dot? Okay, give you an idea. It's just imagery. I'm trying to, move this along in a way that you're able to comprehend it. This starts to get really, really, really technical. Okay, so I'm trying to make this as simple as possible, and I don't understand it that well, but well enough to present it to you to the way that I'm doing it. Okay, so while the planet might be the planet here that we're might be roundish, it's not round, but it's roundish in its visual perspective from a distance. All right, so the playing field remains square at the physical level. So again, we're talking about space-time fabric. Okay, again, the quadrant vector subdivision that's being utilized through this technology, right? Checkerboard mutation. So in biblical accounts, we can see a reference for this. That is for the 4 corners of the earth several times, because of the quadrant vectors that segment the planet's playing field are square. Because of the quadrant vectors and the way that it's segmented, right? It's segmented in a way for the planet's playing field as being square. Not because the world is square, right? It's just because the way it's gridded off. See, most Earth maps show the curvature of the planet while spread across a flat map. But time zones and or God zones do not. It's all based on uniform square pixels, exactly like a television or a computer screen, because the way quantum particles self-align, which are such as gauge bosons across a laser beam to lay out the space-time fabric, follows a mathematical vector spacing across a grid. The lines of the map allow the gods to delineate which time zones, God zones, time zones, can be designated mathematically. While those time zones might appear to be crooked or curved from a surface Earth perspective, in real life, those who track the chattel or cattle, the resources, you and I, unfortunately, that's the way they see us. Their respective incomes for what we see with taxation and all this other stuff across a cube vector coordinate. That's how they keep track. A mechanical simulated scalar map is made up of beams of light, photons, right? Photon particles that travel across any section, any space, equal distance apart. If you have a phase pulsation of laser light side by side, it creates a grid, right? It can by each other you can see where it lays out. It can create a grid map. Laser light is precise in its pulsation, so it never weakens no matter of the distance. So if those pulsations are timed, it creates a grid giving that point in space a number. An example of this would be, again, computer or a TV screen where you may say, let's say we have like 2,500 pixels going up and then 2,500 pixels going across, creating this square grid, right? We can refer to this as a quadrant, that square grid as a quadrant, and that which is inside as being pixels, or call them vectors. Okay, now laser light or plasma is distinctive frequency that is the same bandwidth. This is interesting. It's the same bandwidth of Y and Z gauge bosons, that is quantum particles. Quantum particles is really the makeup of what we understand within quantum science as being particae. These particles hold the coordinates of every fraction of inch within space-time. Space-time is simply just a word for this holographic playing field. That is to say, time matrices. Okay? Time matrices, understand, time is a construct. Space-time is broken down into quadrants, and quadrants into vectors. Inside 1/4 of that space, each quadrant is placed another grid, which then delineates into quadrants again, and then again, and then again, until you have a scalar grid for every square inch of all space that you can apply a number to each square or pixel vector, right? Okay, now you have a number for every horizontal and every vertical inch, and each one is numerically sequenced, allowing you to locate instantly any inch within the entire space-time fabric. Within that vector, we can program the computer, okay, theoretically, within this that vector, we can program the computer, quote unquote, to create a hologram of a chair, only though within that pixel point or location. Okay, so every subatomic particle of all space-time has been scalar mapped by gauge bosons, which are 2/3 of the Trinity force that delineates the projection screen of Earth. They are quantum entangled, so they simply agree among each other which pixel to provide the flash that will create reality for that quadrant vector pixel. Each particle is standing right there in order to function as the projection screen of that precise pin dot of manifestation space fabric. What is being done here is scalar mapping. So the firmament is facilitating this 7-layer frequency fence. What we're seeing, and we're not spinning, okay? We're not going around the sun and all that stuff. All this stuff is occurring under that frequency fence. Okay, let's just say these are transposition fields that are created within this Eka-Veka, system, and this goes back to 25,500 BC. Okay, so it created inactivation of the DNA strands 9 through 12. The disassembly of DNA strands 1 through 8. And the insertion of a skip code, which I talk about within, I'll refer to within the sound and light techniques, resulting in an unnatural sequencing of the particum and particae strands in the DNA's double helix, the inactivation of all but 4 sub-frequency bands in all 12 strands, eliminating the natural form of the variable base DNA, scrambling of the natural pairing configuration between the nucleotide sequences within the double helix, and phase lock between Cathara grid center 5. Again, this is in reference to the Ihumbi, the unnatural navel that we see within the manifest template, okay, which we covered, or should I say I went over briefly in a previous video. Now, if you guys want to know more about this, I can do a podcast with somebody that knows a bit about it, because I just don't want to be the only one talking about it. That's something that I'm willing to do. Keep that in mind. Anyhow, so the result here is the DNA template and axotonal lines. Distortions, they block the embodied D12 pre-matter, original Christos blueprint of Earth life forms, and link the body to the reverse matrix, the NDC grid, right, where we just talked about, started off with checkerboard mutation, all right. And this is reduced human life span here, chemical DNA, brain function, and blocked race memory. Yeah, no kidding. This has occurred since 25,500 BC. All right, so it's important to understand this well enough to, when you do the technique, which I said I would get around to doing, and I would provide it on Patreon, not here on YouTube, but on Patreon. And I will look to put together PDFs to go along with this. I'm not quite sure how I'm going to do this, how I'm going to put it together, but it's going to be within one post, and all that will be accessible on Patreon when I do it. But again, to know this stuff well enough to understand your intention while you're doing any technique, because there's no magic trick to the technique. It's you that's facilitating it through a very clear sense of intention. And again, this is the reason for doing these videos here and breaking down as simply as I can the meaning of them, the terms that are being used, that you'll find used within the technique itself. It's all about intention and knowing what you're doing. Okay, that's what it's all about. You're facilitating it through your command. All right, folks, there it is. This will be found again, obviously, within the playlist. And whenever I'm able to get around to doing what I can do, I will proceed with doing the technique, which will be a guided technique. And it will be available in Patreon, and I will let everybody know here on YouTube that it is when it is available. All right, so I think that's went on long enough as it should have to create the emphasis of what I was referring to back in the previous live stream in regard to what is the sun really, and dealing somewhat with the transmission that we see coming from the pole star, which is referred to as many things, and I use the term that's a cheilontic science. Word for it is the checkerboard mutation, and this has to do with the reconfiguration of the DNA codes, and yeah, it just goes on and on. But what I would like to emphasize here, or what I was looking to emphasize here, was the importance of the reason why you have come into this incarnation. And again, the subject matter really for this live stream is Ascension. What is it really? And so I already covered that. I went over that in detail in regard to the practicality of it, what's going on, being your authentic self. What does that mean? So for those who have come into this live stream late, you probably would would be a good idea to go back and listen to that in the beginning. Now, if there's anybody that would like to go ahead and timestamp as far as what's being spoken of here within this video, that would be great. That would be much appreciated. I'm not going to do it. So, but it would be beneficial to others perhaps. You know, you go through it and just mark it, and that way people can see that. And I'll go ahead and pin it within the comment section so that it's the first thing everybody sees. So if anybody wants to take on that task, that would be great. I think there's a whole lot to unpack here within this particular live stream, so I would see how that would be something beneficial for others that would come into this and watch this and would want to navigate towards certain things or listen to certain things over and over again, so that they would have a greater understanding of what's being communicated. Most of everything except for the last part of this, which is that video that I played, is pretty simple. The video is it deals with a bit of terminology that I tried to make simple, but listening back to it, it's like, well, I guess it could have been done a lot better. But for me, it's been really, a lot of things I've been doing has been at breakneck speed. It's been in the moment where I had to do it, and I didn't have time to spend any more time than I did, which turns out to be a lot of time, especially when I was doing videos and stuff and having to edit them and render them out, and then I would have to EQ the voiceover and make sure everything is clear enough, and it just runs into a lot of time. I can give you an example for that. Doing something that would take probably 5 minutes to do, you would, well, listen to. Let me rephrase that. If you see a video such as the example like within the Cosmic Shorts, the longest video is 5 minutes, the shortest video is under 2 minutes, hence the reason Cosmic Shorts, meaning they're short videos. But that 5-minute video did not take 5 minutes to make. It's just the end result was 5 minutes, but it took hours to do all that. There was preparation. I had to create, throughout that series, I had to create all the graphics and everything myself, and it just very time consuming. And and if I was working if I was working by the hour, it would be pennies on a dollar. And this is the reason why I don't want to do videos anymore. I just want to do live streams and stuff like this because I don't have to edit it. I don't have to go into all that other stuff. But certain things like for music, and now I'm just kind of rattling on here, but it's important because music is half of what I do. And it's the most important thing for me to do, because within the music is my testimony, it's my story, it is my soul's reflection, which encompasses a great deal of things, and within this lifetime and outside of this lifetime. So my music holds my encryption because it's the mirroring of myself. So it's the most important thing for me in regard to my authentic self being expressed. Okay? So when doing stuff like that, I have to try to make sure the sound is right, and it takes a while to do this, which if I do something that takes me 3 or 5 minutes to do, it's going to take a lot longer before I can actually put it out, Another reason why is like, I rather just be playing live and doing everything that I'm going to be doing live because it's all part of the same thing. And then somebody else can record it, because I just don't have any desire to work in the areas that I've been doing before. I've been doing this for a long time. I'm 65 years old, that chapter is really over with, if it ever was to begin with, considering how many subscribers and how much, leverage I've been able. I mean, the whole point of me being online, really, like I said, was to develop communities, boots on the ground, not in cyber communities. It can start there, but that's not where it stays. It has to go where you live. So my whole thing has really just been that, and very unsuccessful. 16 years later, and it's like, gosh, dog, if I was in the real world like what I was doing within ministry, what took me 16 years would happen within a year in the real world. That's again, the online thing here is a tool. It is not a substitution, nor could it ever be a substitution for the real thing. But here's the problem that just it burdened. I've carried this for a while, which I don't do anymore, thankfully for me. It burdened me. This how people have become so integrated with the internet and the cyber world to where it has substituted the real world, boots on the ground, direct accountability, personal direct responsibility, true inspiration that actually matters because of your personal connection to people directly. It's been removed from that. There's still some of it out there, but it's so prominent, and it was so heavy to say. And that's the reason why I looked at this and I go, this is a tool, but most people are not using it as a tool. They're using it as a substitution for life, and it's not, So I'm doing what I can, but you need to be, at least I need to be, I don't know about anybody else, but I need to be forthright. Transparency. So what you see is what you get. You might not understand what you're looking at, but what you see is what you get. I'm very transparent, and I don't really hold anything back anymore, So there's that. So if anybody has any questions concerning any of this that I've been doing here for this live stream, I would recommend, because it takes a while for the chat thing. If you comment in the chat here, that's not going to show up until much later. So if you have a question or something you would like to say, and preferably I would encourage people to comment on the video itself. Like it, share it, because these, if I'm going to be online, which I have been for 16 years, it's important for people to take the time. You can like it or dislike it, the video. I don't care either way. All right, don't. But it's the interaction that goes on within the algorithm that determines where I am within the placeholder. Use that word, placeholder, within the within the thread of subject matter. Because nobody's really been liking the video. I mean, it's been like 20 people. That's the average for every video. And I look at people I've been on here for 16 years, folks. Come on now. So it's do something. Otherwise, the algorithm is going to go, people don't care. And so it won't do anything. And that's the reason why, people say, I'm shadow banned. No, it's because nobody's doing anything with the videos. They might be watching. And I would say probably like 50, 60, at least 60%, if not more, people that watch my videos are not subscribed. And I never say anything about that. Rick Beato will talk about that in every video that he does. And he has, 5.5 million, subscribers. I don't even have 10,000. And I don't say anything about any of this stuff because the way I look at it is either you value it or you don't. And that should not take anything away from me, but it doesn't make me feel good about being here all this time and doing all the things that I've been doing. And half of the videos that I have on this channel, I deleted half of them. Okay? I've been here for 16 years. All right? And who does anything for 16 years and doesn't expect something to come from it? You know what I mean? Come on. I've been here as long, if not longer than most that have way more going on than I do. And I kind of gave up on the idea of being perplexed about it. But I do know that there's a system in the way how things work here. And if people are not commenting, so please comment on the video. if it's something that you want to say, if something you want to ask or something, but anything, or just say hi, you know. Any kind of activity is what I'm saying. Any kind of activity, if it's there's a lot of activity, then I'm going to show up on other people's recommendations a lot quicker. Right now, it's like I'm shadow banned, but I'm not shadow banned. I'm just not relevant enough to show up. And it's all because of the lack of people, sharing, liking, commenting. And the liking thing is a big thing. It really is. The more of that that exists, or you don't have to like it. Like I said, you can say, I don't like it. If you don't like it, fine, say you don't like it. But that activity registers within the algorithm, and it determines whether or not I'm relevant. Honestly. So do what you can. I would greatly appreciate that. I would like to see. I like to become more available, so that I have a position of credibility to be able to help, for us to work more together as a collective. Like I said before, we can do all the things that we need to do on our own, but we need to really work with one another. And the more pull that I have and more leverage that I have for that, I'm going to use it. Because I know how essential that is, how extremely important that is. So the more prominence that I have, the more that I'm responsible to be able be able to do those things. I am able to respond. It's just been so much work. I don't have the ability to do what I did before. I just don't. And again, it's like I said, my chapter's shifting, as all of our chapters, all of our chapters turn the page after a while, right? And we move on to the next one. And now I'm at that stage. Keep repeating, I'm 65 years old. I'm at the stage where I need to be doing other things now. This is the last end. This is the tail end of this incarnation for me. So all I'm asking is everybody, allow your present true self to come forward and work through that. And let's work together, and let's be helpful to one another. Let's be available to one another so that we can get more of the work done that needs to be done. Most of the work has been on the shoulders of a few, while others stand by idly. Nothing happens with that. It's not sustainable. And that's the reason why things have remained the way that they have remained in this world. We need to step up. And it's not hard. It's a lot harder not to do it, especially for those that do know the truth of what I'm saying. So, trying to encourage, but in a stern way, that's what I'm doing here. All right, so well, you're calling it complaining. I'm not calling it complaining, right? That's the way you're perceiving it. And what's difficult about that is that people's perception of what's being said isn't necessarily what's being said, but that's how they interpret it. This is called admonishment. Look, if you want to look that up. I'm not going to make excuses for myself. If you think I'm complaining, then that's what it is for you. But that's not what I'm doing. If people click off, fine. I don't need to be here anyhow. I really don't. That's the truth. People think that I need to be here, or if people think that anybody needs to be doing what they're doing, they have other choices to make. And especially later in their life, they have other choices. You just know things that you know, and you can't expect anybody to know what you know. And it takes time to figure those things out. And once you know truly what it is, even you may know what it is earlier in your life, but you don't really grasp the whole thing until a certain point within your life. I mean, what I've done and what I've been doing has to be seen from the whole picture, not just isolated situations. And most people see things from an isolated perspective. They see one thing, and then they associate that one thing with everything. You have to see the bigger picture. But do people look at the bigger picture? No. Can they look at the bigger picture here on my channel as an example? Can they see a bigger picture? If they took the time to do that, they could. But that's not what I've experienced over the last 16 years. So what I'm saying is what I'm saying, and I mean what I say and say what I mean. So it's hard to do that online because I don't have anybody in front of me where they say, is this what you mean? And most people will just talk at me. I run into this. I used to be in the ministry, so I would be dealing with people personally. It's a lot different in those scenarios. There's things that are similar because of behavior traits, but there's a lot of things that are similar. But here within the online thing, there's dialogue created through text. And then people's perception. If they come and hear or me or anybody else, and you hear what they say, there's a judgment made based on what you think they're saying and who they are based on your first impression. But is that the truth? Or is it just a perception based on what one thinks to be and how they relate to what they already know and then associate that with their perception of belief? Looking through the spectacles of their experiences and judging it through that. Now, is that fair? No, it's not. So the proof in the pudding is what I've been doing. And I've been doing it for about 14 years on my own dime. I wasn't doing it as a vocation. And if you've just come here recently, here at the end of this live stream, you don't know what I said prior to this. Now, did you? I'm very thorough when I talk about things. As you may have known, I have a tendency to say a whole lot. And the only reason why I'm doing that is so that I am understood for your benefit. Also for mine, so I stay encouraged. And if you think in any way, shape, or form, any of this stuff has been easy for me, you would be wrong. You wouldn't know that I was involved in ministry prior to 1993. And I had spent many years in ministry. And I got sick and bedridden in 1993. My whole life, everything disappeared for years. I never was able to recover from that. And only I know what that was. And then I had it happen to me again in 2010. And then I had it happen to me again in 2020. Oh, why was that, Randy? Well, see, that's my personal life that you would know nothing about. You don't know, you don't see me as an overcomer. You don't see me as having a person who has tenacity, that has been holding on with a thumbnail's grip for a good portion of their life. Somebody else's story is somebody else's story. You never know who you're speaking with until you know. My recommendation is don't give advice based on something that you really don't have to give. Now, to be encouraging is another story. But I don't need anybody's correction. I correct myself. I spent most of my life self-examining myself. I am that I am. And if most people don't understand, that's fine. But I will set the record straight when I have the opportunity, as you may have already noticed. What you see is what you get. I'm transparent. I don't play games. It's not for anybody's benefit to play games. I don't need to have a false persona. I did that for a while just so I can get along with people. I was trying to be all things to all people. Doesn't work. Can't. Especially in these outer worlds. Not possible. Well, that's what you say it is. And what other people say it is doesn't matter. It's what you say it is. You can say it's not complaining, but that's what people will see it as. No, it doesn't matter what other people see it as. I'm not talking to other people. I'm talking to you. So what you're saying to me is that that's how people see it because that's the way you see it. Let's be honest, okay? Well, that's because that's just the way I am. And you don't recognize me, but if you did know who I was, and I had a friend of mine who actually, I had a lot of people who really didn't understand me for a long time, and they would talk behind my back, and they would say things about me. This wasn't true. But the people that I knew, the people that were my friends, would anytime that would ever happen, they would always defend me. And the first thing that they would say, and this is their own words, not mine, they would say, "He's a good guy. You just got to get to know him." Everybody's different. And just because I hold myself the way that I hold myself, you don't know my story. You don't know why I hold myself the way that I hold myself. And if it comes across in an offensive way to you, that's not my fault. That's just your perception. You don't know me. I don't know you. But it takes time to know somebody now, doesn't it? It takes time to know yourself. Right? And how people perceive things is not my business. They haven't gone through what I've gone through. They don't know why I am the way that I am. But I can tell you this, regardless if anybody sees me for complaining or agitated or whatever, those things may be true to you and it might be relevant in some way. However, you don't know the story behind it. But for sure, my track record and what I've done speaks for itself. Nobody has a clue to what I suffered during 2020. I have no idea. I can't even speak of the things that I went through during that time. I can't even speak of them. So if my countenance offends you, I can't be sorry for something that I'm not responsible for. I am that I am. But my track record, what I do, speaks for itself. My fruit speaks for itself. If somebody has need of something, I have always made myself available to them. I've given beyond what I was able to give. So, being an armchair philosopher is pretty easy. Getting to know somebody and finding out the reasons for things and respecting one another, that's a different story now, isn't it? That takes work. Well, let me just say this to anybody that may be listening to this. There has been plenty of times, me being online, where I wanted to comment on certain things and I never did. And the reason why I did not comment on them, like for other people's channels and stuff, is because regardless of whether or not I thought myself to be right, one thing for sure was it wasn't right for my opinion to be expressed. Just because I could doesn't mean that I should, and I wouldn't. And that's something that I learned a long time ago. If you say something to be uplifting, or at least try. Admonishment means correction. And if you don't agree with the corrections that I've been pointing out, then you just don't understand things from my perspective and my personal experiences. The reason why I do that, and I give analogies for it, such as things that are sustainable or not sustainable. If you have a community garden, I've used this several times and it's a perfect example. If you have a community garden and you only have a few people working that garden for the benefit of everybody in that community, how sustainable can that be? It's a common sense question. It's not sustainable. It can last for a while, and then it will collapse because of the burden on the few for the many. If you don't see the logic in that, then I can't say anything more. So when I look at things and I see how it's occurring and how the availability that is not made towards one another within the leadership of those who are leading within communities, quote unquote, I'm going to point those things out. Because why? I know them personally. Been there, done that. Way before anybody even started to do that stuff in most cases. Like I said, I've been around. I've had my feet in the trenches. I've had direct confrontation with demonic and spiritual negative entities. Tried to kill me a few times. Been involved with demon possession, exorcism. I got a long history. What people don't seem to understand anything about because they don't have it. I don't talk about it very often, hardly ever. And therefore, there's really no reason for me to say it because I try to stay on track with what I'm doing. But for me to pretend for everybody just so I don't offend people, that ain't going to happen. Not anymore. I did that for a while. And all it does is just eat me up inside. I've gone through way too much to be carrying that for other people. I'm not interested in leading anybody around by their nose. I am just being of service. If you don't see it as being valuable to you, fine. I'm 65 years old, like I said. I'm not going to be here for that long, folks. You don't see the logic in that? I know my timeline. I know what I've been through. I know what I endured from the age of 6 months old. And the only reason why I'm here as long as I have been is because my contract isn't up. But that doesn't mean I haven't suffered greatly. So when you look at the countenance on my face, you look at what you consider to be complaining and all these things, what you don't see is my history. What you don't see is what I've gone through. So you never know who you're really talking to, now do you? So if you do comment on things, my suggestion is don't have an opinion. Either you know or you don't know. And I have to remind myself of that all the time. Either I know or I don't know. It's not what I believe. It's not what I think that matters. And what I do know is that it's important to encourage one another, not to try to school one another. And especially trying to do it publicly. That's shaming people. That's not beneficial in any way. If anybody has anything they want to say to anybody online, my recommendation is to contact them privately. And if it's really important, then you can have a dialogue. But don't do it publicly. There's so much of that going on. Just encourage. Give what you feel that's good for you to do. I mean, on a mutual level. Not your opinion. Opinions don't really mean much. I'm talking about the idea of correcting. The assumption is that you understand my story or anybody else's story, and you don't. In a lot of cases, most people don't even understand their own story. Be a little compassionate. Try to be understanding and have humility in regard to, maybe I just don't know what I'm talking about. I say that to myself all the time. Maybe I don't know what I'm talking about. And I'm fine with that. I just give what I have. And like I said, for the same reason you don't need to be here, I don't need to be here either. But let's be civil. Let's be respectful. Okay? But because I'm not in a position where I have dialogue with anybody here, I'm just speaking openly about things. And if you don't understand, I'm glad that you said what you said. I'm glad that you commented and said, you've seen it as complaining. It's not. What it is frustration. over the many years. I've suffered a lot physically. I've carried trauma with me, not just my own, but from other lives and other people for a very long time. Nobody knows that. Nobody knows anything about me except for those who are very close to me. And then I'm very selective in regard to what I reveal to them. But what you see is what you get. You may understand it or you may not. Either way, I'm not going to compromise that anymore. I appreciate everybody, but I have, here's the thing. Because of what I've encountered in this lifetime and been put to the brink of death several times, I hold my space. I endeavor to stand in the gravity of my own shoes. And it may sound like I'm defending myself, and that may be true. But it's been for my own sake based on what I have experienced. I know the world that I'm in. Most people don't. They're still obtuse to the reality of this field that they're in and the conditions and actually what's been running it for as long as it has been ran. They don't know of the factions that they're dealing with. They don't know the adversarial activity and the extent of that I've had firsthand experienced for a long time with this. And honestly, this world has beat the shit out of me. And I've been what appears to be, well, I'm not going to say what I was going to say something, but nobody's ready to hear it, so I'm not going to say it. It's not anybody's business anyhow. But I do what I can, and I have been doing what I can. And you don't know who anybody is until you get to know them. And that takes a while. Sometimes it takes a lifetime. A lot of people will keep things from you because they don't want the ridicule. They don't want the confrontation. They just don't want to deal with it anymore. And you find that with people that have experienced certain things in the past for the last 50 years, that had certain experiences, they kept their mouth shut for the longest time because they didn't need the exile of that. They didn't need the ridicule. They didn't need already what they were already going through. That was traumatic enough. They didn't need to have people condemn them or treat them any worse than what they had already been experiencing. They were protecting themselves. And here within this online experience, everybody gets this instant gratification, instant information, so-called. That's come from somewhere. And there's nothing free. Somebody's paying the price. And that's really taken for granted because it's misunderstood. Well, first of all, I'll let everybody know that Daphne is the moderator here, and she does things based on her judgment, okay? And so Daphne's in charge, all right? So if you get blocked or anything like that, she sees fit that you need to kind of just cool your heels, all right? So again, this is let's look at this from a practical position. If somebody comes into your house, even like if you're having a yard sale, so it's open to the public. But if they come into your house and they just start doing whatever they wanted to do, and they don't show any respect to your house and to you, you don't want them there. So just because we're in the open public forum, so to speak, doesn't mean that we're all entitled to do whatever we want to do. You come into somebody's space, you need to respect that. And it's important to listen to the person that holds that space instead of thinking about what you're going to say next. That was admonishment. Something that seems to be lacking greatly these days. All right, so also, since we're on this subject, I guess it's probably fair for me to address this, which I normally don't talk about any of this stuff except for like with Daphne or something, or usually just Daphne. Certain people will come on and they'll talk at me or leave comments. They don't really know what this channel is about, or they think they do. They know nothing about me, or the thing of it is that they'll treat everybody else the same way. That I notice if anybody treats someone a certain way, they'll treat everybody the same way. Okay? This is what I've noticed over the years, many years. And if somebody comes on and they leave comments, and if I respond to your comment, which I normally don't do these days, okay? But if I do, I'm going to communicate something that I think is important to what you're saying. And if you don't come back to me and reply along that context, because we're supposed to be having a communication, a dialogue, and if you are just going to say what you want to say without listening to what's being said, so it's a one-way conversation, I'll just delete it. I'll only give it one chance. I don't have time for that. Because in some cases, it takes a bit of time to be able to answer certain questions. And this is the reason why I don't really do that anymore. Okay? But see, if you come on, anybody, just so you know, whoever it is, whoever in the future may be listening to this, if you listen this far, if you come on this channel and you don't show respect, I won't give you any either. It's just that simple. So you're welcome to your opinion, but that doesn't mean everybody's entitled to it. You're welcome to your opinion, but that doesn't mean everybody's entitled to it. So, yeah. And normally, if those individuals, I will go to their channel, and obviously, yeah, no surprise, they have no content. So they don't know what it's like to do what's being done. It's a lot to handle, especially when I was from 2020 on. For years, I was extremely ill, and I didn't know if I was going to live that day. And I was putting out content, and for the longest time, I kept that hidden from people. I carry a lot. I've been through a lot. If you can't understand that, that's because you haven't suffered anything. You have no understanding of what that means. You'll just have judgment. You're immature. You're unexperienced. And that's a fact. When I talk to myself because I know where I was and where I wasn't and all these things. I self-examined myself ever since I was a young child. Always internally examining myself. Maybe people do that. A lot of people do that. I don't know. But I know that I did. I'm never interested in offending anybody, but the truth is that people get offended where there is no offense being made. And a lot of times they get offended because they're not able to hear what is being said. One of the ways in which to be able to test yourself in regard to your authentic self being present is that you're going to ask yourself the question, honestly. That honest question is, am I ready to receive what I am going to learn? When you open yourself up to your covenant reactivation for the reason for being here, are you willing? Are you receptive for what you're about to learn? Because in most cases, it's not something we are going to want to hear. It's not something we're going to want to do. Look at yourself. Are you a placeholder, or are you working through your authentic, true self? And if you're working through your authentic, true self, you're going to look, if you're looking to admonish, you're going to look to build back up again. You're not going to make statements about things, and especially within having the basic discerning skills within this type of platform. There isn't a dialogue. There's this ongoing regurgitation of feelings for the most part. There's not an accountability to what one's saying. They're just interested in saying what they're going to say, which also makes this very difficult to do a lot of the times. And most people are not within their authentic true self, because their authentic true self is truly for the benefit of all life. But within the ego and within the mind and within the personality and the influence of culture, it becomes perception based on what they think is true. And therefore, that's the reason why most people are extremely adamant within their behavior, which opens up a lot of areas as far as within the spiritual activity that's occurring around you. You create breaches within your field, and it allows for entry to influence you, and for some people to possess them. If you entertain it long enough, it will make you vulnerable and susceptible. You'll function as a placeholder and not authentic self, which allows for other things to come and drive or step into the driver's seat of yourself, of the body that you're in. You don't think that's true? Well, those who have ears, like I said, I'm always speaking to myself. I'm always in the process of correcting myself. I mean, before I used to be pretty harsh on myself. I used to beat myself up a lot, but I don't do that anymore. Well, I do it a lot less than I ever did. Put it that way. But I'm talking to myself first, folks. I'm creating a boundary for myself, and so that I can hold my space. So if it sounds like hard correction for you, or it sounds like something that you don't want to hear, then you're welcome to leave. But I deal with things based on what I know to do. And sometimes it's very difficult. Sometimes it's very difficult to be able to voice those things and to be able to communicate that in a way to where it's received the best that it can be. I don't want to be interpreted. I want to be understood, because that's for my benefit as well as it is for yours. I see it from both sides. But again, to emphasize, I cannot deny who and what I am and what I've gone through and how it's affected me. I work at this all the time. I'm always dealing with it. Sometimes I go up a couple steps, and then sometimes I drop back a couple steps. Hence the analogy of ascension. But I'm always moving forward in some way. It may be very slow. It may be very inadequate, especially based on other people's perceptions, but I can't be concerned with that. I just have to be as authentic and be present as I can. And if it's not valuable to you, fine. I'm speaking to myself first while I'm doing it, so it's beneficial to me. And it took a while for me to actually accept that. You can ask Daphne. She'll tell you. I don't know if it's bots or not, but I do know the more, especially the certain subject matter that that I'm really starting to focus on here, I know it's not something to be heard, because I'll just say this boldly, because of what's had transpired over the last 4 days for me, I have stepped to a different level in regard to I'll pick a fight. And I'm not talking about pick a fight with people. I'm talking I'll pick a fight with the principalities. I'm not afraid anymore. I mean, it's not that I wasn't before, but it doesn't. I just have this, after my consultation that I had with my collective, this came on me. And I had this sense of I'm just going to go for it. I'm going to say things. I don't care. If it sounds like I'm picking a fight, and if I lose the channel, I don't care anymore. I really don't. There comes a time, and it's my time. So I'm going to be, as I have been doing, but even more so now, I'm going to be talking about things that need to be heard. I need to hear them, and I'm going to say it from the rooftop. And when you're on a platform such as this, and it's ruled by the watchers of this world, you become a threat. I'm not going to be foolish, but I'm not afraid to pick a fight. So what I'm saying is I'm just becoming more bold. So whatever comes this way, to answer your question, whatever comes this way, I will address it if need be. Because that's really what I'm supposed to do. You know? Again, this is not anything that I want to do. I haven't done anything that I really want to do for a long time. And people think that's a choice that you make here. You go, oh, you can do whatever you want. No, I can't. Okay? Some of us have created a contract to do certain things. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't use different skills that you have in the process of that. But I had desires way back when. Again, people don't know my story, like I don't know your story. But in that process of me finally figuring out who I was enough to start walking in that space. This goes back, like I said, 1990. Okay? 1990. So, again, being able to walk in my own space, knowing who I was, I started to do what I wanted to do, and there was nothing wrong with what I was doing. It was part of my nature in regard to my gifts and abilities and tenacity to do it. I had a drive, which means I should be doing it. But what happened to me was it was removed. And there's complications behind that because it's a huge story, and it's not anybody else's story but mine, which I'm not willing to tell. But the point is that I went through a lot in the process, and I could really never do what I had intended to do. I know that's very vague. I understand that, but like I said, it's a huge story. I became bedridden and blah, 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 and had a lot to do with a lot of different things. Long story short, is that I always kind of seemed to come to the same place. I would see other people do a third of the effort that I was doing, and they would become successful. And the other day, I was able to read something that I had saved in an archive that I ran across long ago. Not real long ago, but years ago. And I opened it up, the document, and it opened up right to that spot that was relative to me about what this person was going through, and they were telling a story in order to tell the next thing that they were going where they were going with it, which I find myself doing pretty often. And so he's laying out his chronology, his lineage, and I'm going, that's mine. And it was like a mirror's image of myself in a lot of respects. And it was a reminder to me that I have a covenant contract that I had made. And regardless of what I was doing that may have been good for me to do, it could have easily redirected me in a different area from what my covenant contract was. You follow with what I'm saying here? And to say that was an easy process on any level because it was hard to hold on to anything. And like I said, it's a long story and it's my story, and I'm just trying to share a little bit to say, if you think it's easy, well, that's fine. If you look at other people and you go outside of yourself and you see them and you think you understand what that example is, that's fine. Doesn't necessarily mean it's true. Doesn't mean what you see is what you get. It's not what you know. It's just what you perhaps think. In most cases, that's been my experience. It's what people think. It's not what they know. It's what they believe, not what they know. And you can look at those things as being an example. Oh, this is what happens when you are walking in this space, or a spiritual leader. I never wanted to be a spiritual leader, and I still don't think myself as being that. Even when I was doing music and I was on stage, I'd rather be on the back stage rather than being in the front of the stage. I never wanted to say, "Here, look at me." It just didn't fit with me. I just felt too shy most of the time. I felt insecure about it. It just felt weird to me. Not to say it's weird. I'm just saying it just didn't feel right to me. So, you do what you can do. And I could never really achieve what my dreams were because it was conflicting with my covenant contract. It doesn't mean I couldn't do those things, but it had to be in line with where my covenant contract. And that took a very, very, very long time, decades, to come about. At least my awareness, my understanding of what it is, truly. Because it's always a process. When people think that they know, when I thought I knew certain things, I thought I knew. I didn't know. I knew in part, perhaps, but it was mostly an awareness that I was connected with, the truth of it. And I didn't have the story. I just had a part of the story. And it takes time, processing, and engaging, and on the job training, so to speak, before you really start to know what it is. So for those who are eager to want to become spiritual leaders, or go out there and have a name for themselves and all this stuff, and things seems to be crashing and burning around you while you're doing that, it's like that's because you're not supposed to be doing that. What you're supposed to be doing is preparing, doing the work for yourself and preparing. And the time that you will be doing that is where you'll finally get to a place to where you go, I don't really want to do any of the stuff that I wanted to do before. It doesn't mean that you won't be doing those things. It just means now you've been redirected. We get into our mind, we get into our personality, we start seeing things, we start seeing people and things around us, and we want to be like that. We feel like we're, especially for those who had felt like they've been out of place most of their life, they never fit in anywhere. You're always kind of looking for your own space and perhaps your own tribe, right? And that's a process. Here at 65, you can take it for whatever it's worth, but I'm giving you wisdom, knowledge that has been applied and tested. And that's what it boils down to. There comes a time where you begin to know and you become assured, and there is no wavering. Your stance is stable, unmovable, and that's through trials and tribulations and everything that gets thrown at you. And I've had everything thrown at me except maybe the kitchen sink. It was one way. It wasn't necessarily the best way, but it was the only way that was available for me to be able to get to where I'm at now. And I should not be here. Meaning, I should physically not be here. I am a walking miracle. That's the other thing people don't see because they don't know somebody's story. They just assume. I carry a lot of stuff with me, as I mentioned. I say these things only so I can be heard, not because I need to say things. So please. I carry a lot of things. I carry other beings. I've carried them for a long time. I'm not the only one that's known this. I have other people that's seen it. My contract is mine, not to be confused with everybody else's, because everybody else's is everybody else's. There is no blanket, there is no generic aspect to this. It's individuated. It's purposeful, and some of this stuff goes back millions of years. I can look back now, I can see the reasons why certain things didn't happen, and I know the reason for that. It was purposeful. It was meant not to happen for my own protection. You can't see those things as you're going through them. You can't know these things as you're going through them. That's something that unfolds eventually, if you're granted the time for the processing of it. But again, to go back to the original reason for doing this video, which was Ascension, what is it really? Ascension is always equals to steps backward and steps forward. But it's the process of moving forward with your authentic self. I'm not going to repeat what I said in the beginning because it's rather lengthy. Perhaps maybe I'll do a separate video for that because I think it's important. But I would recommend for those who are interested and haven't heard it from the beginning, go back to the beginning and listen for that. And again, for those who would like to be of service here and you would like to timestamp as far as the things that have occurred within this video, at least the first 3 things, that would be greatly appreciated if you want to do that. But anyhow, I've said enough, more than enough. Yeah, if you guys want to share with me certain stuff about that, I'll look to do what I can to respond to that. If you want to type out questions in the comment section, I can easily go ahead and just copy and paste it to a document so that I'll have it as a point of reference, like I did earlier. I wasn't really able to answer the questions uh, that well because, as I'd mentioned, I had most of those answers within the video that I played here. But I'll do my best. Now, I see a perspective on Earth's poison apple tilt. Yeah, well, that is actually, if you go to the video that I played within this live stream, you'll get answers for that. Now, I don't really subscribe to everything in regard to chelantic science cosmology. Okay, um, I think I find it for me. I'm not gonna. I'll just say I don't subscribe to it. I have a different view on it, but I think that video, if you take a look at that video in regard to scalar mapping and the transmission coming from the pole star, that will help to answer what you're asking about in regard to the tilt and the axis and everything. Because if you look at the Earth here and you record in a time lapse of the movement of the celestial bodies, quote unquote, I mean there's a whole lot to be said about that, which I would like to talk more about that. But in regard to what the frequency fence is, okay, get into a little bit more about that. But if you do a time lapse a recording of the movement of the celestial bodies, you'll notice the pole star remains the same, and we stay the same because we're not moving, we're not spinning. It's a stationary body, okay, and what we're doing is looking at, so that's where the transmission is coming from. And if you may notice, based on the photography for the video being taken of the film being taken of the time lapse, you'll notice it as being at an angle. So I think there is relevancy there in regard to what chelantic science is referring to. It's just the model that they're using. They use around Earth, and they use the sun outside of it like this, like within the solar system. And I don't see that. I see the sun as being a photosphere, and the moon, they're all confined within the same. They're all local. It's localized. It's it's under the firmament. Okay? Anyhow. So that's what I refer to as being the frequency fence, also the firmament within that video. But I think if you go back to this and just kind of watch that, it might answer some questions about that. And if you have further questions, just go ahead and comment in the comment section. Again, to emphasize for those who are leaving comments, I mean, things that are, important to you. If you have something to say to me personally, do that personally. Do not do it in the comment section. Okay, that's not respectful to anybody, all right? Me or you or anybody else, they don't need to know that. If you have something you want to say to me personally, you'll find my email address or a way to be able to contact me directly through the description of this video. So you can do that. But anybody has any questions or anything they would like to say, or just, whatever it may be that would be beneficial, or some, like I said, questions I could answer, you go ahead and do that, and I'll look to respond to them within the next live stream. Okay? So I appreciate that. Thank you so much. Yeah. I don't really spend too much time with chelantic science stuff these days. I did it for a minute or so. And one of the reasons why I have done what I've done with it is because it can be very, I mean, it can be very complicated, and it can be very confusing, which I'm not a fan of confusion. I think I have something I like to say about that, but I won't say it publicly. I'll say it privately to other people. And this is no reflection on chelantic science. I just don't like things that are not presented in a way that's simple for people so they don't be confused. There's ways to say things several different ways. Like if you're going to say something about something to explain it, and then you can explain it in a different way and then explain it in a different way. Chelantic science does that a lot, which is really reminds me of my biblical studies. And I go, that seems like they're repeating a certain approach and technique, because of the Apostle Paul did that a lot,
how he would explain something, then he would explain it in a different way, and then explain it in a different way to make sure you got the point. A lot of terminology that is used in chelantic science is what throws people. It's like they don't know what that means, you know? And it's important to just to break it down as simple as possible. This is what they're saying. And that was the whole reason for me doing the cosmic shorts, really. If you go look at my playlists, go over the cosmic shorts and just kind of go through that. That gives you an idea of what I was attempting to do was break it down to explain what it was. You know, it's not so much the terminology, but it can throw you. I mean, if you don't know what they mean, it's like, what's your point of reference to it? You know, it just becomes confusing. And then they keep piling on more terminology, and it just makes you just like, what the heck is this? You know, but some of it I subscribe to as far as the cosmology within chelantic science. There's a whole lot there that I subscribe to, okay, that I know. I would say that I know, you know. And my knowing really comes from predating chelantic science, like 2 decades prior to that. And what I experienced during the time when I was first bedridden and all these other things, I had certain experiences that didn't really have any names to be given to it. And chelantic science did provide some names. It doesn't really matter what the name you would call it, but it gives you a way to be able to communicate it. But I experienced these things on a real level that had everything to do with where I was at. Like I said, this was prior and during the time of me being bedridden, which I got down to, I'm 6'3". I got down to 152 pounds. I looked like, you know, I looked like walking death. Okay, but I wasn't walking because I was bedridden, right? But long story short is that I experienced a lot of things during that time by myself, you know, and a lot of things. So coming across chelantic science, it's like, okay, I know that. Then I hear Ashiana talk about, well, she would start hearing things within electrical devices, you know, around her, you know, like within the refrigerator or within a fan. She would hear these subharmonic tones, and it would sound like voices, like singing and stuff like that. I had that experience 20 years before she did, okay? And I can tell you exactly how it happened. I mean, where it happened and what was going on at the time. I can't say exactly how it happened. I was just in that state. I was very weak, and I was sitting at the edge of my bed, and I was playing my electric guitar, and I was playing the song, the 23rd Psalm by Keith Green. And when I was playing this, I started hearing this choir, but it was like no other choir that you could hear in this world. It was in me and throughout everything. But it was only happening when I played the guitar. When I played the guitar, it just came, and I just stopped. And I go, what's that? You know, I knew what it was, but it was like, it seemed odd to me. I mean, I was just curious. That's the better word, because everything that was happening to me at that time was all odd. Okay, so at any rate, so I'm playing, and this angelic host starts harmonizing with what I'm playing, singing. It's none like any voice that you would hear here, nothing like it. And it's multiplistic, you know, it's hard to describe. You can use the word multidimensional, but what does that really mean to most people? You know what I mean. I'm sorry. Nope, I didn't mean to make that sound wrong or anything. It's just, you can't describe some of this stuff. You just can't. So you try. But anyhow, so I stopped, and then I started again, and I stopped, and I started again, and I stopped, and then I started again. And every time I stopped, it stopped. And every time I started again, it started back up again. And so when I heard her tell her story, I go, oh, I know what that is. I had that. You know, so most of everything that I have comes from my own personal experiences. People think that you're on the internet, that you get everything from the internet. I don't get everything from the internet. Okay? I get very little from the internet. It comes from me. I've been there and done that. It was a personal thing that has happened to me, you know? And it took a long time in most cases to figure out certain things. Something like what I'm describing, that didn't really take very long to figure. I knew what it was, okay, at that time. But the point is that certain things, they're unspeakable, that you may go through and experience under situations like what I was going through and being bedridden, being extremely ill and at the brink of death all the time. That takes a while to process that stuff. Okay. And I still am. Okay. 65 here now. I'm still processing it. Do I understand it better? Yes. But it takes time to process certain things, and certain things you just can't say. You cannot communicate. You try, and you can do your best that you can, but some of it is unspoken. It can't be said. So what I have to offer is really through myself, and like it or not, receive it or not, I'm transparent. I don't hold certain things I keep from, I won't say anymore to anybody about, because I've learned that the hard way. Certain things just need to remain yours because nobody's going to understand it, you know? But I've given myself, and I've given myself towards ministry. I've given myself to humanity and the service of humanity. So I think my track record speaks for itself. May not like me, may not like my personality, may not like the way that I look, may not like my countenance, may think that I'm behaving this way and behaving that way. You're welcome to think whatever you want. Doesn't necessarily mean it's true, but that's your perception, which is not the truth. It's just your perception. And I just like to distinguish that. When an individual goes through a lot of suffering, there's things that can't be spoken. There's a knowing of certain things that can't be shared. And until you're tried, until what you believe is put to test, you won't know what you think you know until that's put to test. And it's a process. And it's within these outer worlds, it is an ongoing process. A couple steps forward, a step back, a couple more steps forward, a couple steps back. It's in flux. It's the nature of these outer worlds and the conditions, especially here on Earth and the body that you're in. It's not easy. For some, it's a lot worse than others. A lot harder, should I say. And so I've overcome a lot. Like I said, I'm a walking miracle. I should not be here. And I have a lot to say about that, but I'm not able to share that publicly. I'm not allowed to. Yeah, the responsibility first begins with yourself, and that's valuing what you've gone through. I mean, because I've been so tenacious. I mean, tenacity just runs through my veins. I've been so tenacious that I was like a jackass, you know, with myself. I would go through such hardship, such extensive suffering, and yet I would still I was always trying everything. Even if I was getting knocked on my rear, on my keister at the brink of death, and I'm still putting stuff to test. Which, because of that, when I was able to really look at the reason why I was doing that, I seen it as my true nature. Because I've been here more than once. At least within these outer worlds. It starts at different places, but the point is that I was able to trace that, where that comes from, and why. And again, I can only be vague about that because I'm not allowed to reveal what that is, because I started to try to do that before and it was a big mistake. And even when I speak of it right now, I block things in me so that I can't be read by other things that are around me. Not that they don't know, but I don't need to be broadcasting it. Because it's relative to what I'm doing now. I've been flying under the radar for a long time, and that's really purposeful. And I haven't been really orchestrating that. That's been orchestrated through me. That's purposeful. A lot of times these things take place, and we don't realize them until many, many years later. Actually, what was going on in regard to, as far as things being orchestrated through you, because you made yourself available, but you didn't quite understand what it was, or didn't really consider to take in consideration understanding about the matter. It's something that can potentially unfold later, and that's what it has for myself. And I speak in innuendo and in code a lot because I do it purposely just to see if anybody's paying attention, because I don't want to reveal things openly. I want to see whether or not there's any engagement before I say anything further. Yeah, the sun. The best video, I think I covered it pretty well within the last live stream. What is the sun really? And in a nutshell, it's a photosphere. It's a transformer of frequency and voltage. It is a frequency modulator, which can be referred to as a stargate. Okay. So a photosphere, like I said within the video, the last live stream, I define everything within that, and I break it down. So I would recommend going to check that out and just take notes or something so you would have a point of reference. And if you have any more questions about it, then if I can answer it, I will do my best to do that. Well, thank you very much, everybody. How long have we've been on here? Almost 3 hours now, right? It's been 2 hours and 49 minutes. I think this is one of the longest live streams I ever did. So, cool. I seem to be okay. Anybody have anything else? Yeah, I would like to get Trinity. I would like to get. I'd like to revisit the idea of what the firmament is a little bit more, based on what I understand it to be, and be able to share that in correlation to the overall aspect of what we're experiencing here. But know this, it's important to understand this, that this is a manipulated reality. It's an artificial reality. And that's due to the transmission that's coming through the pole star. There's other things that factor into this, for sure, but that's one of the major things. And when you look at the idea of different location, as far as geographically, and there's a separation that we recognize as how we measure the idea of time here, that these are gridded off points that have to do with particle spin rate that is manipulated through the space-time fabric through the transmission coming from the pole star. Okay, that's the location. And so that's going to affect your perception of the reality of all of what this is. So it's a workable reality, but we're not really seeing what we get. It's what we see is not what we get. And as we move forward in our authentic self, in the process of ascension, what we're doing is we're incrementally moving through frequency. Okay? Like if you look at a color wheel, right? A color wheel, the hues of the color, and you move through that and you see from one color changes into another, into a different shade. That's the movement of electromagnetic energy, right? or light spectrum, okay, which is frequency. So each color is a different frequency. It's a movement of frequency. Like on a piano, you play this note here and then you play this note over here. Well, there's a difference between that note and this note based on frequency. Okay, I know this is an oversimplification, but sometimes that's the best way to approach this. So you're going to have this movement and oscillation, to go back to the piano thing, because that helps define it a bit more, because you hear a sound and then you play a note that's, 4 semitones above that. Is that a higher sound or is it a faster oscillation? Well, we perceive it as being a higher sound, right? But in truth, it's a faster oscillation. The illusion is that it's higher, okay? So as we move within our authentic self, as mentioned before, earlier within this live stream, defining my definition, my understanding of the process of ascension, or should I say ascension, which is one and the same, really, ascension, ascension. But when your true nature is expressed, and you may have noticed that at certain times you'll be listening to something that's being said by somebody or something, or listening to some information that seems to be well, in the past you wouldn't really had any interest in it if you heard it. Yeah, that's the best way to put it. In the past, you may not have never even, if it crossed your path, you didn't care. There was no connection to it. But at one other point, all of a sudden now you're connecting to it, and you're kind of like, you're present. You're present there with it, right? What you have done at that point is now you've entered into your authentic, expressed self, okay? Your true, authentic self. Your true awareness, okay? You've moved into that. So now you've moved in frequency. Like the color wheel, you've moved in incrementation. And this is what's occurring, and it's in flux. As we move forward, we are within our authentic self. All our other selves that are within that consciousness band, which we refer to as dimensions, are copies mirroring our authentic expression or action. So when you have the action of true thought, that's the spark that brings you into your authenticity. When you act, when you do that, when it's a drive within you, an earnest, a desire, it can be safe to say you're now functioning within your true authentic self, and you're not the placeholder. These other copies of yourself within the dimensional field are aspects of self, but there's only one that leads the charge, and that's your authenticity, and that's through action. That's through conviction and action, which is, you can feel it within you. When you're really interested in something, or you're excited about something, you're present. You're truly present. In regard to your reactivation, especially your reactivation to your covenant contract, your soul contract, your collective, which you initiated, and you're the way shower. You're here now, your boots on the ground here on earth, you're the way shower. It's your decision. Collectively, but you're the one that stepped into the role to do it. Okay? When you agree to the reasons why, again, reactivation for the reasons why you're here, is when you step into your authenticity. That's a catalyst for that occurring. So we can either be in that state, which is an ongoing process, by the way, right? Or we can be in a state of place holding. And most of the times, it's a place of place holding. So that's something that we need to remind ourselves of. Because again, to honestly test yourself, when you have this desire, one of the first things you should ask yourself is like, okay, am I ready? Am I able to receive what I'm about to learn? Because if your true self is there, you're in it, right? You're in it to win it. Okay, I'll just use that phrase, but you understand what I mean. You're present. You're there. You don't know what is going to happen. In most cases, you're probably not going to like it. In most cases, it's probably going to be really hard. In most cases, it's going to be tried. And in most cases, you're going to. There's situations and things that are try to knock you on your butt and get you off kilter and get you away from what you're doing, because you start to light up, and it's recognized. And especially if you've been around for a while with a manifest reality, you have a signature, and when that lights up, certain beings take notice. And if you're a troublemaker for them, they don't leave that unchecked. Okay? So when people start wanting to be spiritual leaders and all this other stuff, it's like, yeah, do you know what you're wanting? Do you actually know what you're wanting? And most people just don't know. Especially in the New Age. They think it's all butterflies and rainbows and stuff like that. I think, who was it? What was the expression that I heard? Burping butterflies and farting rainbows. That's funny. I don't care. I don't care where you come from. That has to be funny. So I thought it was funny when I first heard it. I go, that's funny. But yeah. So it's not all this floaty stuff. This is serious being here. Okay? And it requires serious attention and serious action. But don't lose your joy. Don't lose your love. Let that be your catalyst for doing. So whatever you bring into it, make sure you can hold on to those affections. Those are most important. That's something that I didn't say in this live stream, that I'm looking to correct myself here. That's very, very important. And knowing that it's your genuine love, not a copied love. Your genuine sense of self is unique. It's not a copy. You have copies of yourself, like I mentioned, placeholders, mimics, the other aspects within the field, because it's a harmonic construct. And I tried to give the analogy of the color wheel and the idea of frequency and the piano and notes and oscillation, that type of thing. I know it probably needs much more explaining, but if you get my point with that, be it that there is multiple layers of sound and light conscious awareness within the field, because it's a consciousness construct. So therefore we have multiple layers or copies of ourselves within the field itself. And those copies mimic the authentic true self-expression. So whatever frequency that you're holding within your authentic self, it is a placeholder for that frequency. You understand that? Hopefully that made sense to you. Where I was going with this, I don't know. But I'll just leave it at that. I was trying to answer something, and I just went off in many directions trying to explain it. Yeah. Yeah, it's an endeavor. Carla, it's an endeavor, right? It's an endeavor. It's an ongoing thing. And as we're able to endure, the more that we have, the more that we can endure, the more we can handle. And that's a process, So it takes time. But it's all on the job training, that's for sure. Certain things we need to wait for before we do them, but other things we just need to be doing because it's necessary to be active with your intention. And being, again, intention in this case meaning being very clear about what you're doing. As clear as you possibly can to know why you're doing and what you're doing. Yep, we are. Love is the glue. Yeah. Yep, it does, because it really holds everything all together. Because really the bottom line is, like, for me, for the reason why I'm here, and ultimately, I mean, there's a whole lot more involved, of course, because it's quite detailish. I mean, this is a long history of things transpiring throughout manifestation. There's a whole lot of things to clean up. There's a whole lot of things to resolve. There's just a whole lot. But the bottom line intention behind that would be for the benefit of all life. So love is the glue that holds it all together. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Without it, we're not present, honestly. Because within our true nature, we are the love that we have always been. Yeah, it's not so much a collective love, although that it can be, but it's your personal signature. The love that you hold is unique, and it's the love that you have always been. So let us honor ourselves by knowing that we have, each one of us are very unique, and it's our love that we hold that matters, our authentic, true nature, our true aware self will bring that knowledge to you presently within that moment, that confidence. If not, it's not a bad thing to contemplate, now is it? It's a good thing to meditate on. This is the reason why I've done so many songs that are that. We are the love that we've always been. First time I wrote a song about that, that's the whole song. And I first wrote it on, actually I think I was laying down on the couch or something, and this melody came to me. And I got up and I picked up my guitar and I figured out some chords for it, and which are the same chords that I still play if I was to play it again, that's the same chords I would use. It all came right then and there. And I don't even think I plugged the guitar in, but I turn on the recorder on the computer so that I could capture it in the moment. And I uploaded that. What you hear is the first take. That's a brand new song right in that moment. I did that on acoustic guitar at first, initially. And, that stuff comes, at least for me, stuff comes through that conduit of least resistance within me. That's the reason why my art and music and everything is so important, because it doesn't block anything. It just flows and it goes out to other people. And that's one of the main reasons, really the main reason, I have to say the main reason why I want to go on tour, physically on tour, so that I can give that, because I know that it holds the encryption of the intent, and I've seen it work. I've seen that work on a supernatural level before. And like I said, I come from this background and my experiences, things prior to Keylontic science or anything else that I heard, I already experienced miraculous things, And music, what I was doing when I was in ministry, the main thing that I was doing was music ministry. Okay? So this is the reason why I want to go back on tour, because I want to be able to, because it's something to be experienced in person. Within the analog world, the primal sound currents run differently than they do in this digital domain. Okay? They run completely different. Right? And mostly what I see within the digital domain is a residual effect. It's not a direct, true effect. And again, this is the reason why I want to go on tour, because I know that's really what will make a difference for this, because it will, well, I don't want to go any further with it, but yes. So we are the love that we have always been, and that's something that's actuated through our present state and being around people and connecting with our energy physically in the room and being used as a conduit for myself for that to flow for the benefit of others is there's nothing more exciting to me than that. Just so exciting to see miracles happen. I just rejoice greatly. I've had experiences. I'm a walking miracle. Okay? I am a walking miracle. I should not be here, but my contract wasn't up. Okay? So you can apply this to yourself any way you see fit. All right? For what I'm talking about concerning myself personally, you can see that perhaps in your own life, right? Just saying, you're unique. There was no one like you. You carry within you and hold within you a love that is unique to you. It's divine, but it's unique. It's recognizable. Go outside of this domain and it's quickly recognizable, and you recognize all those others as well. Anyhow, any hoot. Seems to me Dorian wants to eat some more food because he's pestering me from the door. Yeah, true. Within our true nature, there isn't any conditions. There is either yes or no. Within our true nature, it's unconditional because there's only yes and there's only no. There is nothing in between. There is no conditions. It's just either this is what you're doing or it's not what you're doing. You know? So I guess it's important to say, let your yes be yes and let your no be no. Anything else creates confusion. Yeah, he makes it a point that I hear him. All right, folks, I'm going to go ahead and go. Again, for those who would like to assist, to share, to help in any way concerning this channel and myself, and let's give Daphne applause for her work that she does as moderator. She does an amazing job. Thank you all for who has showed up, the questions that you asked, things I was able to a certain degree to be able to share with you and to be able to answer and explain a little bit about myself in the process. Thank you all for being here and participating. And I would ask you to be able to continue to do that. Share this video, like or dislike, either way, it doesn't matter. In order for the algorithm here to increase me as being relevant, because again, like I had said, I average probably like 20 likes for a video, which after being here as long as I have, I don't even register. So the more people like and more they comment, the more activity that there is on my channel, the more that I'll be, made available in other people's recommendations. And that's really what's kept this from happening. It's been a really slow process. Like I said, you can like it or dislike it, but the activity in itself really is what matters. It's not my platform. I'm just responsible for what I'm doing. That's it. Which is it's a big thing. But point is that that's how it works here. And without being active, this channel just becomes a standstill. I have a lot of content on this channel. I have a lot of things that I think are valuable, and it would be nice if more people had access to it. Grid work. Yeah, well, being in your authentic self establishes that. Okay? Honestly, you don't have to go through a lot of ritual or techniques in order for that to happen. Because it's all about you anyhow. It's about your intention. So this, after going through and coming across so many different things throughout my life, what I try to present is what I see as being the most important things to focus on, because they're the easiest thing to be able to implement. You know, I like the bottom line of things. I like the bottom line, you know. And so I try to present stuff that I do, perhaps a little bit lengthy, but it's a lot less lengthy than actually what I initially would be delivering to people. And what most people, this is nothing other than just what I see and what other people tell me. Like for chelantic science as an example, there's some people out there that teach it very well, but it's so unfamiliar. It takes a lot to get used to the language that's being used, the terms, and it just, if you come in the middle of it, you're just going to be extremely confused. So it's been my purpose, one of my purposes anyhow, since I was communicating it for a short time. I only did it for a minute. I don't really do that much of that anymore, honestly. Like I said, I had my own experiences early on, and the reason why I went in the direction of chelantic science was because there was certain familiarity that I had, and there was a need for me to understand more about the mechanics, which I didn't spend much time about it, because once I looked at it, I understood it. Because I looked at the encryption of the particle, and the encryption of the particle told me everything. Okay? And this is the reason why I've been communicating what I have been communicating in the way that I've been going about doing it, because I've been trying to shorten it down to say, this is what it is. You don't really need to know all this other stuff. But if you don't know this, all that other stuff is going to be really confusing. So I just been trying to make it simple so people that are unfamiliar with it can just get the understanding of how it would be beneficial to them in some way. Okay? And that's how I've been presenting it. Hence the reason why I said I did the cosmic shorts and stuff like that. I'm condensing things down and trying to explain it in the simplest way, so people can so they can get it, so they can understand it. Otherwise, you know, I've had people come on here and talk at me, and they'll quote things directly right out of the chelantic science dictionary, and not really listen to anything that I'm saying, which is just that when somebody does that, they are a placeholder, and they're not working through their authentic self. And I've run across a lot of that, but, you know, I don't do things the way everybody else does it. Never have. Never could. You know, never could. When I fell on my head at 6 months old and I had upper cervical instability affecting my parasympathetic nervous system, shutting down my organs, yada, 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 I had to use the right side of my hemisphere to process information. I seen things through a creative way and through imagery and feelings. And this is how I translated my way of interpreting things in this world. And I still do that. That's the reason why I know what I know. Because it's personal. Through personal experience. Some things took a lot longer to understand what it was, because in the process of recovery, which happened in 1993, there was just so much incomprehensible, right? So it took decades for me to start having a working knowledge of what that was. Now I have a better idea of all that, a lot more, way more. But certain things just go unspoken because you can't communicate it. It's because there's no language, there's no way to communicate it. And it's sort of like the idea of feelings. Can you put feelings into a sentence? You can put it into a sentence, but does it, if you put your feelings into a sentence, does it really reflect what you're feeling? The answer, truthfully, is no, it can't. But it can give you a general idea of what that is. But based on the person who is reading it or hearing it within that sentence that you're giving, they're going to interpret it based on what they think that is. And it may be the complete antithesis from what they believe it to be. But that's their perception based on their experience of their knowing within that moment. And a lot of times that is through a placeholder consciousness state. It is not through the authentic self. Take it or leave it. These are the things I know to be true. So, awesome. You guys and gals are awesome. I really appreciate you being here, and I guess I'm going to go ahead and go take care of my cat because he stopped meowing, so that means he's kind of ticked off. But he is spoiled though. I can't help it. I got to spoil the cat, man. Yeah, divine timing is your timing based on what you had predetermined and are able to facilitate here within this incarnation. As I spoke about myself, I had gone through a lot of suffering from the very beginning, but which is, you can't really talk too much about those things because, again, people's perception of what that is. But I noticed throughout the decades certain things that would transpire, and I can look back in hindsight and go, I understood that, but I wasn't ready to implement it until this time frame here, And it's on hindsight, you can see it. You can learn a lot from yourself in regard to hindsight and contemplation and meditation. And you can look at it and you can see it for what it is. And you can, within that present moment, holding your authentic space truly. Because when you look at this in a way where you're observing self in that way, it can move into action, actuating the energy. So you're not functioning as a placeholder, frequency, state, but you're moving it forward, and which allows for you to understand, okay, that I know. I wasn't able to implement that then. So it needed, other things needed to transpire before I was able to do that or begin to do that truly. And you might be in a process where you are doing it, but you don't really take hold until a certain point. And you always know what that is when it happens because it's always in the present state. But, again, sometimes it can take decades. Sometimes it can take your whole entire life, and then you fulfill whatever you're doing at the at the last minute. You fulfill everything because now it's led up to that point. It's like, and your foundation is so firm within your conviction and knowing that you are unwavering. Right? That's one way to put it, I guess. But remember, you're divine. You're the one that set this into motion. You're the one who established the covenant. It's your covenant. It's your contract. So, out-of-body experience. Well, we're not the body. This is a vessel that allows... I've said this before, and some people got offended by it. Well, maybe, I don't know if they got offended by it, but they didn't quite understand what I meant by it, and they felt sorry for me because I thought this way. So this is really an interface. That's the way I see it. Now, it's an interface that's a symbiotic relationship, okay? It's a living body that's independent of your soul. It doesn't require your soul to be in it to function. Now, functioning intelligently, that's a different story. But I can give you my story. When I fell out of the crib at 6 months old and landed on my head. It was a tall crib. Boom. Upper cervical instability, totally jacked up. I relived that because I wasn't sure of what happened then. I heard stories. My mother told stories about it. And all of it was fabrication. And the reason why it was fabricated, making up stories about what actually happened, is because there was guilt involved on her behalf. Okay? And I understand that. I get it. You know? So in my process, as far as what I've been doing, like through music and singing and stuff like that, that increases my frequency. Okay. And through that, with what I'm doing and other things that I'm doing that's related to that, there's an intention taking place, and I am creating an internal broadcast within me. That's it's not mind energy. It's something that has now been programmed within me through, like a recording, and then it's broadcasting. So I'm broadcasting. One of the things that I'm broadcasting at a particular time, this happened about like 3 years ago or something, I believe, that I was sitting on the couch and I stood up and walked into the kitchen that's over here. And as soon as I walked through the doorway, I seen what happened to me when I was 6 months old. I seen the whole thing, and just like a movie playing out. I seen, it was all within a nanosecond, but I seen all of it. I knew exactly what happened. I seen my brother. I knew what he was wearing. Knew all of it. So what happened when I fell out is that my spirit left the body, and then it was up here, observing everything up here. Okay? So the body, and far as what happened, far as with the spirit, I didn't feel the trauma of that because I left the body. In most cases, when a new incarnate being comes here, or they suffer something like that, or some other trauma of whatever it may be, you know what I'm talking about, the spirit leaves the body. So what's the experience though is taking place in the body. So it'll cry, it'll scream, or whatever that's going on. That's the body. It's not the spirit's not there. It'll leave. Okay, this is my personal experience, and I've had affirmation through this through other people as well. But this I knew through my own personal experience, because a year and a half later, I came back into the body. And when I came back into the body, I felt all the trauma of the body. I felt that my electrical system was totally jacked. I was just like vibrating. It wasn't because, I was vibrating high in frequency. I was vibrating because my nervous system was totally jacked because of what happened to me landing on the body, landing on its head. So we're not the body. And you can learn to disconnect from the body and go out of the body. And I think that if that's something you should do, but it needs to have an intention behind it. There has to be intention to do that. It takes a while to be able to do that for some more than others. Some people just are able to do it easily, it seems like. But for some of us, like for myself, I held a lot of trauma in things that happened to me earlier in my life. And I was abducted when I was in 1972. I got a lot of stuff that's happened to me. So I had to deal with, at one point I had to deal with the implants that were in my body. And I had no idea what implants were. All this stuff I went through on my own. Everything I learned virtually has been on my own, okay? So long story short, there is none. It's always a long story, isn't it? But when I had found myself going out of the body, I've had it happen. It's not been anything that I planned to do. It would just happen. In some cases, I had it happen, and I had no idea what was going on. It was really weird. I'll give you one instance for that. So to answer your question, we're not the body, so we can leave. We just need to be able to train ourselves, and we need to have specific intention for the reason why we're doing it. We need to be, while we're going somewhere or we're looking to retrieve, and it takes a while to bring, even if you're able to retrieve it out of the body, you bring it back into the body. If the body isn't, if that's not a raised vibration, you'll lose it. The body can't hold it. That's the reason why we can't hold these memories of our pre-existence here. We have to recover it. If you're looking to recover it, my concern has always been, I want to know the essence of who I am. I don't need to know all these other things. I just need to know I am that I am, right? The true self, which is not based off of experience. Experience is something you're having. It's not something that makes up the totality of who you are. That's not it at all, of course. But long story short, again, to use that phrase, I had a few experiences where I woke up in the body and I thought I was in a cave. I actually thought I was in a cave. It's like, or at least I became, let me rephrase that. I become consciously aware in the body while the body was still in stasis. When I use the word stasis, I'm referring to sleep. Okay? And I became conscious in the body. I mean, being aware that I was in the body, but at the time I didn't know that I was in the body. I thought I was in a cave. And this happened to me more than once. You think I would have figured it out the first time. But when you're in that state, it can be very confusing. Again, this is not intentional, so there's no point of reference to anything. So I'm in this thing and I go, it's pitch dark, there's no light, and I mean no form of light, right? Nothing. And so this is black, right? But it's a shade, it's not without light. It does have light in it. Where I was at, there's none, right? Absolutely none. And so, but it turns out I'm in the body. I didn't know that. So I think I'm in a cave. So I'm pushing on the body, right? And I realize, I go, wait a second, I'm in the body. And it didn't occur to me. It did, but it didn't at the same time. It's kind of weird. It's really hard to explain some of this. But at the time, it occurred to me, but also I didn't follow through on it, was why don't you just step out of it? Just roll out of it. Intend to step out of it. But I still kept pushing. And eventually I woke the body up. And then then it really dawned on me. I just woke up. I became conscious in the body. I returned and I became conscious in the body. Because you can go unconscious. I call it contemplating your navel. Now, this is something that I was aware of, but I really didn't have any evidence to support it. I just had experience and feeling and intent, or not intent, but intuitive connection to it. And then later I was talking to somebody else about the idea of, it was Scott Lemriel, actually. And I start talking about this, And I said, you can go unconscious. And he says, yes, you can. And until somebody comes along and taps you on your shoulder and wakes you up from your daydream. Because you can think of going unconscious as going into a state of place holding without anything other than just observance. Not interacting, no actuating the energy, nothing. And you could just be there. And this is what I ran into with some of people that I know. Specifically, I heard this a while back when my uncle had passed away in the hospital, and he says he doesn't remember anything. And then my friend Mark Roach, he died, and he didn't bring back anything. He didn't remember nothing. That's because of two things. Can be two things. Going unconscious, okay? And then when coming back in the body's not able to hold anything because the frequency's so low anyhow. And you don't remember actually what you may have experienced. And it couldn't have been very much of anything. You didn't go very far. You weren't able to bring anything in. There was no point of regeneration that would actually allow you, when you came back into the body, to bring that memory back, which you'll see within certain NDE experiences, right? But that's not always the case, right? So, again, to go back to going out of the body, I think it should be a process of training for a purpose, having very specific intention. And actually, I put together guide for this for myself, and I shared it, which I haven't been able really to utilize, which I would like to be able to spend time developing this, because it's an excellent guideline for it. It incorporates the music that I put together with it in context with intention and planning throughout the day and preparing for the process. And it can take quite a long time, but once you get to the place where you actually move outside of the vessel, you know exactly what you're doing and why you're doing it. For me, it would be retrieving information directly that I can find directly through myself. I don't need to go anywhere for it. You don't. You just command it within you. That's the reason why I say your intention has to be very clear about what you're doing. That's really the most important thing about that. Just having the experience of going out of the body can be, oh, this is fun. And I know of people that have been doing it for years, and then I listen to them talk, and they don't really say much of anything. They're just talking about experiences. For myself, I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in regard to my covenant contract that I have here and retrieving the information, more information about it as much as possible so that I can facilitate that. And to be able to bring back reactivation gifts, maybe gift is not the right word, but higher attributes, right? Higher faculties. Bring it back in and condition the body so that it can hold those higher attributes, so I can be of greater service here. So that's my take on OBEs. We're not the body, and I think it's only really truly relevant, at least for me, it's only truly relevant for your purposeful, authentic self-purpose for being here to begin with. Because you can retrieve a lot of things without having to go out of the body, okay? Which I've done pretty much most of my life, right? Yeah, well, not necessarily. Again, there has to be a very clear understanding of what's going on. I'm trying to answer the body sleeps, mind wake, or consciousness being aware. That's the better way to put it. At least for me, anyhow. It's all semantics, pretty much. But you understand what I'm saying. That's when the soul leaves the body consciously, right? Well, yeah, that's a way to look at it, true, yeah. But it's leading up to that point to being able to do that and holding a very specific intention for what you're doing. Not, if the goal is just to get out of the body, then I don't, for me, that doesn't mean much, If I'm going to get out of the body, I'm not interested in entertaining myself. If I'm here for a mission, if I'm here to do a work, this place isn't my home. I'm not of the world, but I'm in it. So just from my perspective, okay, that's the only thing I can give is the way I view it. Okay, you can take it or leave it. But I'm just trying to answer this the best way that I know how. If it's facilitating my reason for being here, then I would like to be able to use that. But if it doesn't really factor into that, it doesn't really matter. But I think it's very beneficial to be able to do that, but only if your intention is very clear for the reason why you're doing it. And it should be mission oriented, I think. That's the way I see it for myself. Because I can retrieve things without having to go out the body, like I had said for myself personally. But would it be a lot more faster being able to go out of the body? Yeah, I'm sure it would. But so that's what it would boil down to. I'm not so much interested in how this construct is designed and all that. My interest is the work that needs to be done in order to help facilitate the benefit of all life for the higher oscillation of consciousness. So how I can influence that, how I can help serve that. That's the reason why I'm here. Generally speaking, that's the reason why I'm here. So yeah, well, I fell on my head when I was 6 months old. It my nervous system has always been completely jacked. I don't know if you know anything about the vagus nerve and your spine and how it connects to your cerebral cortex and all that. Well, your uh, vagus nerve spaghettis out into your body that controls all your organs. And the first thing that went with me, because this is an issue that I had, this is the reason why I was bedridden the first time back in 1993. I had no idea. Doctors don't know. Conventional doctors don't know. Conventional doctors. But long story short is the first thing that I experienced that this is all in hindsight. Like I said, I don't know what's going on with me. I didn't know I had this stuff. I was suffering in my body, had pain in my body always, okay? And just felt like I was short-circuiting, okay? But there's nothing to compare that to. We know you're coming up as, a child and into your adolescence, and you endure the way that you feel because there's nothing to compare it to. You don't know, you don't think that other people feel this or don't feel this. It's just what you have experienced your entire life. So you just go with that, So in my case, my nervous system has always just been shot. It's only here until this. It's complicated, okay? Like right now as I'm talking, I'm in pain. And I usually can't last this long, but, fortunately I have. But the pain still remains. It's throughout my shoulders, my head and neck, back, throughout my back, throughout my arms. And I just feel like I'm, for the longest time, I just felt like I was short-circuiting. So that's where it came from my upper cervical injury that happened when I was 6 months old, where your bones are soft. So my top vertebrae here at the top of my skull looks like a question mark. It's like that. It's bent over. Yeah, so the first thing that went, and the reason why I got bedridden to begin with, I was sick all my entire life. But the reason why, when I was 33, I became bedridden completely. Like I said, I got down to 152 pounds. I'm 6'3", so that's very, very, I'm starving to death. Gaunt, eye sockets caved in, green looking. It was because my heart became enlarged because of a B1 deficiency, because of my parasympathetic nervous system and my injury. I had it all my entire life. Like I said, 6 months old, right? I left the body, came back in the body at a year and a half later. It's a long story. Yeah, but it's my story. But, I don't, one size doesn't fit all, right? So this is the things that I've been enduring, somewhat. Actually, everything that I've been enduring is based off of this, mostly. Yeah, no, it's the reason why people can't hold memories primarily is because the body doesn't allow for it. The body has been the codes within the body, you could say within the DNA structure, have been shut off deliberately. That's the reason why I can't hold these multidimensional awareness or pre-existence. We can't remember because of that. But some people can, but the most people don't. And usually the people that can are the ones who have recovered that, and that recovery is a process. For some, it seems to be easier than others. For some have been working their whole entire life because they've been doing it all on their own and they've been doing it under handicap. So, yeah, you can retrieve it, sure, certainly. But the most important thing, like I had mentioned, for me, and I would say this applies to everybody, is the essence of who you truly are, not what you have experienced or what you have been or any identity. No identity or ego or personality has anything to do with who you truly are. Those are the things that you become. Just like in other previous experiences of myself, I always recognize my essence. I've seen myself, experienced myself as other incarnations. And it's always me. I'm always the same. When I came into this incarnation, I was able to relive what I mentioned, falling out of the crib and all that. One thing that remains the same is that I'm always the same. I don't change. We don't change. We don't need to change. You can't associate the idea of change of a personality with the essence of who you really are, because who you really are is perfect. It doesn't require change. You're just experiencing self differently through these different personalities. But these personalities, in most cases, are never repeated. Like this Randy here. This Randy probably won't ever occur ever again. Most likely. Unless it's really useful. Then it may reoccur. But the essence of who I am is always remains, and that's who you recognize yourself as being anyhow. I mean, without having to look, your internal viewpoint. You know, if you can move the emotions aside for a second, and you can move things that occur here that affect you in regard to this reality, and you can just feel the essence of who you are, that remains the same. That doesn't change. You're vicariously experiencing self differently through these personalities. Okay. I'm trying to read some of this, folks, but my eyesight's getting blurry. I'm having a hard time. I've been in front of the camera here for now almost 4 hours, so let me see. I'm going to have to go here pretty soon. I'm getting kind of tired as well. I really appreciate you guys hanging out. But I have to go take care of my cat. I keep forgetting about that, too. Yeah, it is stressful waking up. Some of my best memories here has been when I was sleeping. It would take me away from a lot of this stuff here. It's not been easy here, folks, but hold on. Laugh at what you can laugh at. And I can look back at some of the most difficult hardships that I've gone through, some very traumatic situations, and I can still laugh. And the reason why I laugh at it is because I was able to overcome it, or I was able to come through it. Maybe not completely, and certainly changed at the end of it, for sure. On some degree, actually, a lot of different aspects of change would occur. But to be able to look at it and allow myself to laugh at it, is a testament to the reality that I am not these things. I'm just being of service for the initial intention for coming here, and that's my main catalyst awareness. For lack of terms, I'll just make stuff up. I'm getting tired. For being here is to serve for the benefit of all life, to help bring forth restoration, restoring, being just a small part, but a significant part, as well as all of us are. Without all of us, it can't be done. A significant small part that makes up the whole for the benefit of all life, to bring healing, restoration, renewal, reconciliation. Well, thank you, everybody. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and close out now. I'm just going to wave to you and just stop the stream. Blessings to you. Please comment in the comment section, like the video, do whatever you can in order to help this channel continue to do this. I would like to think that I would be able to continue in some way after 16 years. So I would appreciate you doing everything that you can possibly do in order to help this continue and to grow. So thank you so much. Blessings to you. We'll see you next time.